From young to old, everybody got a say. Tune in, lean in, hear what we can say. Say your face, in your face. We say it bold, no delay. Shooting vibes every Saturday. Voices rise, let the whole world hear. We bring the fire in your face, right in your face, 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 in your face. Yeah. It's in your face, feel the energy rise. Open up your mind, let's visualize. Better days coming, we paving the way. Join the movement every Saturday. It's in your face, yeah, we keep it true. From the heart of the island straight to you. No hiding, no running from the issues we face. We confront it head on, right in your...
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night to everyone.
Here we are. Go ahead, Solo. You can hear me? Solo, you can hear me?
Maybe instigate him.
You seem to see.
Yeah. Not only instigating, but agitating too as well. You know? All right. We are on, right?
Yeah, we are on live.
Okay. Let me say a pleasant good evening to beautiful Rainbow City, Angola. Good morning to sorry. Where am I? I'm still. Oh, come on, no. Get a hold of yourself. Anyway, again, let me say a pleasant good evening to one and all, wherever you are. Those of you who are viewing the program via our Facebook, it's always a pleasure, beyond measure. Welcome to another presentation of what we call In Your Face. Hey, Vanya, I'm sorry getting a little feedback there. I kind of revolve like. So I don't know what's causing that. You know, but anyhow.
Oh, hold on 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, we waiting for one more guest to join on, but yeah. Let's see. Hey, go ahead for a minute. Let me pick it up.
All right.
Yeah, it's your phone because for some reason your picture is still. I don't know why.
No, I am not. I'm not viewing the video at all. We don't have the instigator video.
That's what I'm saying. So maybe you gotta log off and log back on. Log back on. Yeah. 1 second. I don't see him at all no more.
In your face. In your face. What may not like you. In your face, in your face, in your face, in your face. In your face, Island vibes, we bring it through to light night. Turn up the sound, let the people unite. From the heart of PF, we speaking it clear. Real talk, real change in your face, we in your face. We say it bold, no delay. True.
Kid, I should be able to better now. Boy, we're not seeing her. I'm not seeing Howard twice. Waiting from Hayden. You go ahead, Salo.
Yeah, but I'm not seeing my picture.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with
So
your
I
phone.
think we.
In your face. In your face. What may not like you. In your face, in your face, in your face, in your face. In your face, late night. Turn up the sound, let the people unite. From the heart of PF, we speaking it clear. We'll talk.
I think that's better now, fella. You get the echo. So we get the echo from your phone. I don't know why. Okay, that's better. Are you got a speaker or something? Take out a speaker, maybe. I don't know. Is that? Yeah, for some reason we have a little issue with solo.
In your face. In your face. What may not like you. In your face, in your face, in your face, in your face. In your face, I invite you bring it to the light night. Turn up the sound, let the people unite. From the heart of PF, we speaking it clear. We'll talk real change in your face, we in your face. We say it bold, no delay. Truth and vibes every Saturday. Voices rise, let the whole world hear. We bring the fire in your face, right here. In your face, 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 in your face. We talking life, we talking change, we talk solutions. From the street to leaders, sparking revolution. No filter, no fear, just real conversation. Building up the through, uplift the nation. Ideas flow like the ocean tide. Different land views, but we stand with pride. From young to old, everybody got a say. Tune in, lean in, hear what we convey. Say okay. In your face, we say it bold, no delay.
All right. Are we here now?
Yeah.
You can hear me, right?
I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, good. Nice.
Maybe the echo back.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's me this time around because I took in my volume down, really.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that's what.
okay, so I believe it
on your
maybe it was
volume.
that.
Volume.
First of all, let me apologize, for the little mishap there just a while ago. Experience, you know how it is sometimes. Technical stuff, you do get some little technical glitches here and there, and the idea is that we are able to correct that and get the show on the go. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to another presentation of what we call In Your Face, a program where we discuss the pertinent issues that are affecting us as a people, as a nation, and we do offer up solutions. This is not just about rancor or what have you, This is a program so we can build a better nation. We can work more collaboratively with each other, We can work in unison, in unity, because, they say unity is strength. Now, before I delve into the program and welcome the guest this evening, I want to inform the public that the In Your Face program is not about a political propaganda. That's not what the intent is here. Of course, we will be inviting politicians, the common person on the street, everybody, give them an opportunity so their voice can be heard. We also would be looking for members of the present administration to join us at some point in time in a meaningful discussion. So that is something that I want to get clear before we get into tonight's program. I just want people to know that this is not about politics. Of course, when we discuss the issues, we will hold the government of the day accountable. We will hold their feet to the fire, so to speak, because that's our job, you know, to do just that. We might step on a few toes and bruise a few egos, but sometimes that's the way the story goes. Good evening. Welcome. I am yours truly, Melo Salo the First. I am known as the instigator, or perhaps the agitator, whichever, it doesn't matter. Good evening. Welcome to another sit down, another session of what we call In Your Face. We hope tonight's program will be informative, because that's what we are out to do. Interaction, informative interaction, etc. Now, the guests that we have with us here this evening, I want to say welcome to Mr. Harold Rewan, who's the voice of the voiceless. Mr. Harold Rewan, good evening. It's always nice to have you on board the program. Welcome.
Good evening. Hello,
Good now. Oh.
Good evening. Hello. Good evening to the viewers of the program. Good evening to all those persons that we have on today. I am very happy to be here again once again. Well, I'm very happy to be here as a man from civil society to give a contribution to in what direction our little island Anguilla should take. I do believe that it's a very encouraging situation we are now looking at when it comes to the In Your Face program. It is very encouraging from the standpoint that I have noted that with the commencement of personnel being encouraged to come to the program and to contribute in one way or the other to the development of the country, I am very encouraged by this situation. I know this evening we have a very important gentleman with us, and I do believe that in short order we hope to have a member of parliament, a second member of parliament, because the deputy governor is a member of parliament, and also the member from District 6 is a member of parliament. And I believe that speaks volume within itself, because these gentlemen, I could very well imagine, they have quite a bit to do with the limited time, inclusive of family time. So we shouldn't take it lightly when you have these people contributing to the upliftment and the sustenance of the island by taking some time out of the busy schedule to attend the program. Now, as it relates to Mr. Bradley, he holds a very critical position and a broad responsibility to the public service in particular, and by extension, the people of Anguilla. So, me, in my view, thinks that it's a very good starting point for the public service. Because if Mr. Bradley, who's the leader or head of the service, took it upon himself to come and spend the time on the airwaves to enlighten the Angolan public about the public service, and no doubt the challenges and no doubt the prospective reform that the public service should take, about to take. I think it's really a positive, something in the positive direction. Now, this starting point, I hope, will not end here. I hope that following Mr. Bradley's appearance here this evening, we will then subsequently have senior public servants like the permanent secretaries with different responsibilities coming to the program and sharing their knowledge, their expertise, and their experiences on the job, and how they are proposing to make life better for the public servants, and also, I would say, from a primary perspective, better service to the people of Anguilla and all the persons that participate in the services that are rendered here on the island. So I would hope, however, that there will be no impediments in the gesture of subordinates in the service coming to the station to air their sentiments. The reason why is because I have grave concerns as it relates to the general orders, and we know that what that is. Those are parameters that are set out in documents by the public service to where the public, how deep, long, and wide.
Yeah.
The public
hold on for a minute. I think that Solo just did an introduction right now, so we want to get to the topic yet. But
so
I don't know.
So I hope tonight. Thank you very much, Vanya. So I hope tonight that we will put our heads together and move forward in a very harmonious manner. Yeah. So thank you very much.
So I don't know.
And sorry for the extended stay with the introductory remarks.
That's okay. I don't know if you have something like another phone, something close to you that's playing it back, because we hear a reverb from you, but when I mute you, it goes away. So go ahead. No, again.
All right. No, Vanya, I'm not so lucky to have another phone. I only own one phone. I'm not like you. Huh?
You get no feedback
from your phone. Just feedback from you. Maybe somebody next to you listening to it, or turn your volume on your phone down a little bit. Something. Yeah.
And the volume, I can probably go all the way off.
Not all the way off. You want to hear. It's coming from your phone.
Go ahead.
You're good.
All right. You're good. Go ahead. Again, we like to apologize for the little mishaps that we are experiencing, the little glitches, the technical issues. Sometimes these things do happen, after all. But we certainly hope that our viewers are getting the best of us as we try to work through the problem that we are encountering. Well, quite an introduction there, Mr. Rowan, if I may just add. What more can I say to that? Quite an introduction. Quite an introduction. You couldn't have said it better. And now let me go across and introduce the person who is our guest here this evening, one of our guests this evening, in the person of Mr. Perrin Bradley, who happens to be the Deputy Governor. Mr. Bradley, good evening. Thank you so much for gracing our program with your presence.
Unmute.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Brilliant. First of all, thank you very much for that warm introduction, Selo, and also to you, Vanya, for your invitation to discuss public sector transformation I'm looking forward to a very interesting conversation this evening. From the remarks that Mr. Ruan made earlier, I think he's hit the nail on the head, and I do have a lot to say about general orders and the PSC regulations as well. So I think he's knowledgeable about the public service, and I'm more than happy to engage him on that particular point. I think he'll be happy to know that there is some work going on with regard to the general orders and the Public Service Commission regulations. But as the conversation unfolds, we'll get to that. But again, I just wanted to say thank you very much for the invitation, and I look forward to engaging with all of you this evening about the transformation program in the Anguilla Public Service.
Thank you.
The Deputy Governor for gracing the program with your presence here this evening. It's an honor, sir. It's a privilege, a pleasure, and an honor to have you in our midst here this evening.
The honor and the pleasure.
Mr. Vanier.
Yeah, of course, we look forward to this program on a weekly basis. We have gathered, gaining more and more momentum. As we go along, we try to find guests from all genders, from different backgrounds to come on the program and just talk important stuff. Answer questions to people. And we also like to get comments and questions from the public, and also share the live so that we could spread the word and having a forum that we could discuss freely, openly, without any borders or anybody discretions and stuff from both sides, from both parties, no matter whatever religion, doesn't matter. You want to come on, just let us know. We'll be happy to bring you on board.
Right. Thank you, dear Vanier. And you did mention that we should be joined shortly by the parliamentarian, the representative for District 6. Is that what you said?
He's there.
I've been here.
Oh, he's there. Oh, my apologies. I didn't see you. You're a little bit.
You're not paying attention to your screen, Cello.
A little bit late, but better late
No,
than never.
I'm not late. I was here throughout the great introduction by Harold Ruan.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, then. Have me, as they would say, apolocated. Good evening to you, Mr. Hughes, the representative for District 6. Now, I would say thank you for joining us this evening, giving up your time to be here with us as we discuss, some of the pertinent issues that I mentioned that are affecting us as a nation, and trying to bring about solutions. So again, let me say, welcome to the program In Your Face.
Thank you very much, Cello. It's really good to be here.
All right. As we would say, you guys are just about ready to rumble. And tonight we're going to look at the civil service transformation. We're going to go in depth into that. Later on, we will delve into some of the political issues that are affecting us. I guess Mr. Bradley would probably want to recuse himself from that. But right now, he's here as our guest and to share some knowledge with us as it relates to the civil service transformation. Mr. Bradley, good evening again and welcome.
Good evening to you, sir.
Let me ask you a question, if I may. What is your vision for transforming the Anguilla civil service?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. It's about three very specific things. One is to build a service that people can trust. It's about delivering results for the people of Anguilla. And it's also ensuring that we have a public service that is fit for the future, technologically driven and so forth, and advanced and very forward-looking. So I'd say those are the three elements which would shape the core vision of what we expect the public service to be. So those are the three planks in which the transformation program is built around.
Major reforms have been implemented under your leadership?
Question.
Do we have a technical glitch?
You made a statement. I was waiting for the question.
Go ahead, so I think that he's waiting for you to ask a question as far as the
question already. Maybe you had me unmuted. All right. The question was, under his leadership, what are some of the major reforms that he have implemented?
Right. At this point, when we just begun our transformation journey, I would say last August, because you would appreciate that my first term was shaped by two once-in-a-lifetime events. Number one was the hurricane that hit 1 year after I was in office, and then at the tail end of my first term, we were hit by the pandemic. So the public service was very focused on recovering and responding to those two major issues. This second term now is all about public sector transformation. We would have recently hired a consultant to assist us with this, because as you noticed, there were a number of initiatives over the years that have taken place in the public service, and a lot of what we're about to do is actually not new. But it's good that we have a consultant now whose sole focus is to assist us in trying to bring all of these things together in one piece. And that report was published back in August of 2005, which kind of laid out a lot of the findings and things that we were all sure about, that we knew that the public service had its challenges. There were some good spots, yes, however, we do accept that there were some challenges around delivery capacity and those types of issues. So that report was published in August of 2025, right? Our consultant spoke to almost well over 200 persons from around the public service within the community, which kind of laid out a lot of the things that we have heard a lot of anecdotes and stories about the way public service delivers, good and bad. And that report formed the basis of our transformation plan, which was published and launched back in January. We had a session over at the campus Q over at the high school, at auditorium over there. We had all the public servants gathered, and we kind of went into, laid out the plan and so forth. It's all published. You can find it on the government's website. That kind of laid out what it is we're doing and why we're doing it. And basically, it's about improving service delivery, strengthening accountability across the public service, and just better support for public servants. We have a very discerning public now. Taxpayers demand more and expect more, and it should get more from the public service. So we are very hopeful that this transformation plan is going to lead us to that promised land, so to speak.
Can you, Vanya, remember my mic? I see you have me muted sometimes, so you got to remember that, okay? So that's why previously Mr. Bradley didn't hear me when I had posed the question. You lapsed a little bit, taking me off the mute. Anyhow,
Bradley, you said just to answer your specific question in terms of the things that are underway now. The one, we have just concluded some leadership training that we did with a company called CARICAD for all of our senior leaders in the public service. We started with the first cohort of about 22 of the most senior persons in the public service, including myself and the permanent secretaries. And we also did a session with the ministers. as well, in terms of how the ministers can work better with the permanent secretaries and vice versa. And also, we spent a week with the senior leadership of the public service undergoing this leadership training, because at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones who have to drive and lead this transformation plan. The other thing we're currently working on is the pay and compensation issue. We would have just reverted to a 2008 pay, and we're now in 2026. So that's been 18 years since pay and compensation in the public service has been looked at in a meaningful way. So again, we hired some PricewaterhouseCoopers led on that work. They would have delivered the report sometime in, I think it was mid-March, and we're now analyzing that report, looking at the recommendations and trying to work out how, what's the most credible and sensible way for us to implement those recommendations. And given the economic conditions, and you got to make sure these things are sustainable. So there's a lot of work that's going into looking at that report from PricewaterhouseCoopers, just to know that there are, in central government, there are over 1,000 public servants. So it's going to take some time for us to map across the 1,000 public servants, the grade, the pay, and so forth, onto a new scale. So that analysis is taking some time, but it's pretty much done. And our target implementation date for that is May 1st. That's our target date. But the analysis is pretty much done. And thirdly, this goes directly to the point that Mr. Rowan was making. I just want to hold this up. I don't know if your audience can see what I'm holding up here. This is a copy of the General Orders from 1956. Keep it 1956.
Wow.
More than half of the language from that 1956 document is still in use today. So we in the public service of today of 1956. So this is not simply an update or amendment to the current General Orders. It's a complete rewrite, because what we have today is just not reflective of what a modern public service is supposed to operate on. So I think that goes to the heart of Mr. Rowan's point in terms of strengthening our accountability regime. So I'm very happy with the pace at which the work is going. We've also, there was a company called Public Administration International. We've done a lot of work with them over the years. So they're looking at our General Orders, our public service commission regulations. They've done a comparative analysis across jurisdictions, the BVI and other territories that would have done this work. And we've been engaging with the consultants on a regular basis. We had a retreat with the permanent secretaries sometime back in February to kind of sit and walk through, the things that we thought ought to be addressed going forward. We've put those things back to the consultant, and we're now in a pretty much a back and forth. We're hoping to have that work concluded in the next month or two. But again, that's just the first draft, because I'm sure these things need to be tested in real life. It's fine for consultants to recommend, but at the end of the day, we have to make sure that what is presented, what's been proposed, can actually work for us here in Anguilla. So I think that kind of sums up where we are with the transformation plan, why we're doing it, what stage we're at, and so forth. So that's
Mr. Bradley, yeah, I'm sure some of us want to ask the same question and go on to that question there. Let me ask you though, in this consultation, is how much of the business public is involved, and even oppositions and government ministers, because it all affects the people as well, business especially, politicians.
I'm glad you asked that question, because like I said, the report that was published back in August, which kind of sets the foundation for what we're doing. Our consultants spoke with well over 200 persons, including members of parliament, members of the opposition, members of government, former ministers, parliamentarians, and so forth, to get their view, to get their take on how this works. We also spoke to members of the business community, people regular taxpayers who we met at Inland Avenue, at Treasury, other places doing business with government. We've done surveys and so forth. So quite a bit has gone into capturing the views and concerns of various stakeholders, from the man in the street to parliamentarians to ministers of government, public servants themselves. So quite a bit has gone into hearing their feedback, and that went into our report. And if you read our report, you'll see that it pulled no punches about the public service. We can't shy away from these things. And I think one of the things we wanted to do is actually to publish that report, which you can find on the government's website. And we put out a press release saying that the report was available and added a link so persons can go and read it and hear for themselves. And I'm pretty certain that a lot of the concerns people would have had about the public service were captured in that report. So quite a bit of
Vanya, you can unmute me there. Good question you just posed there, Mr. Harrigan. Let me ask you though, Mr. Bradley, how do you measure efficiency within the public service?
That's a very, very good question, right? And I would be quick to say that we don't do it in the best way, to be quite frank. I'll be honest about that. In terms of our appraisal system, it's not in the best shape that we want it to be. Again, all of those things were captured in that report that was done back in August. These concerns were raised about the efficiency, effectiveness, the timeliness of how we deliver things. So the short answer is there is no specific metric that we use to measure efficiency in the public service other than our annual appraisal system.
And you don't think annual is a little too long? It shouldn't be quarter. I mean, I work for the federal government, and we do a quarterly appraisal, which
right.
give you a more up-to-date accountability.
But again, as part of that process, there is an expectation that your annual review goes, yes, it's an annual review. However, the expectation is that you will be meeting with the supervisor on a regular basis to consider how you're progressing against your objectives. So I get your point about a quarterly review, but that's built into the system, that there is an expectation that supervisors and line managers will meet with their subordinates to consider how they're progressing. For instance, I meet with the POMSECs once a month to talk about how we're progressing on certain things. And then I have individual discussions with them as the case warrants. So the expectation is that as you set objectives and goals for your subordinates, that you will be meeting with them on a regular basis to offer advice and support and to monitor progress.
All right. Now, let me ask you, Mr. Bradley, is the civil service currently overstaffed, understaffed, or mismanaged?
That's a trick question. So I'm never going to say that the public service is mismanaged. I'm never going to say that the public service is overstaffed, because in some respects it's understaffed in some areas. So I think it's just a question of redeployment in some instances. But in some areas, there's quite a bit of strain, that there is a complete lack of resources in some areas. And yet in other areas, there are some instances where we can employ more technology and so forth to make things more efficient. Again, if you look at that transformation plan, it speaks to digitization of services and so forth. So we've considered all of those issues. But at this point, the whole idea to suggest that the public service is too large, and what basis would somebody say that?
All right. Now, if you were to take some steps, what steps are being taken to improve accountability among public officers?
I think the first step, I will go back to the point I was making earlier, which is why this was one of the first three things that we tackled. One, it was clear from that report, was leadership was an issue. We've always known that compensation was an issue. And the third thing had to do with those rules I mentioned earlier, the general orders. They're quite outdated and just not fit for what a modern public service is supposed to be. So we've spent a lot of time looking at those accountability mechanisms and so forth to making sure that they're actually fit for purpose here in Anguilla. Also, one of the challenges that, so even though we can rewrite general orders and make them the best suitable for modern times, one of the challenges that we do have is a lack of documentation. For whatever reason, we are very reluctant to put pen to paper when it comes to addressing performance issues. So in terms of strengthening accountability, we're hoping that by focusing on leadership and having one of the modules that our senior public servants went through last week was having difficult conversations. Because every now and then you need to tell people, as we like to say in Anguilla, something you need to be told about yourself. You see, so in terms of strengthening accountability, it first starts with persons being willing to have those awkward conversations with their colleagues to say, hey, you're not doing the right thing, you're not performing, and here's what I'm going to do to support and help you to perform. So I think the first step on that is dealing with the leadership side of it and making sure that folks have the tools that they need to have these awkward and difficult conversations. Anguilla is quite a small place, and I think sometimes there's a reluctance to be quote unquote offensive.
Right, but that should be something on a regular, like at least quarterly, where it's documented and it counts against them as well. I mean, as far as promotions, all that should be a part of the check and balance for them to get promoted. On a quarterly basis, you do a report, you do so it should be a standard across the board, across all civil servants, where you're doing a questionnaire and a report. I mean, generally how the person is performing, the performance, what their weak areas, the weekend, and the strengths, and maybe you need to move to a different department.
Well, I mean, what I'd say to that, Vanny, one of the things I've seen over the years, and I have said this publicly. One of my, and again, I'm not perfect. I'm not suggesting that my tenure was perfect, but one of the blunders I would have made is not the performance management system that we had at the time when I took office, for letting that falter, to be quite frank. And I've been trying from then till now, trying very, very hard to have it re-implemented. We're now in the market for a new AHR system. The team at Public Admin are trying to source that because, again, with 1,000 public servants, you do need to have some mechanism in which you can monitor these things electronically. So we've now, for the time being, reverted to exactly what you said, a simpler system in terms of you set your annual objectives, they're signed off on by your supervisor, and then you have periodic review. So that's already in place. But I think the challenge I find is that when folks are not performing, for whatever reason, there seems to be a reluctance to address those things in a meaningful way. So we're hoping that changes. We would have heard anecdotes and stories about persons in the public service who are underperforming, however you want to describe that. And when you look at those files, the files are pristine. So you hear anecdotes and stories, but there's nothing on the record, which makes it difficult for us to act and deal with these things. So that's a big challenge. I accept that completely.
Yeah. So maybe you want to see if Mr. Hughes want to suggest anything that he thought that civil servants maybe experiences from.
Yeah, my mic is unmuted, right?
Hello, your mic was never muted.
Yeah. It comes back here and tells me that. Now, Mr. Bradley, yes, I heard you there talking about promotions, etc. But I was just wondering how is it based? Whether promotions is based on merit or tenure?
Thank you for that question, Selo. The principles of promotions are set out in the Public Service Commission regulations. It's very clear that it's based on merit and ability. So when a vacancy first occurs, the department head reports that vacancy to the Public Service Commission in terms of how they think that vacancy should be addressed, whether an internal promotion, a transfer from a different department, an internal recruitment, an external recruitment, and that goes to the Public Service Commission. They consider the advice of the department head or the person making the recommendation, and then they may say, well, yeah, we understand the logic of what's been proposed. So yes, we think this person should be promoted, and then that recommendation comes across to me. In some instances, not me, comes across to the deputy governor. In some instances, the department head may say, I recommend John for a promotion. PSC may say, no, we think the position should be advertised, and not just advertised internally, but externally as well. And then persons go through a process. You apply, you're interviewed, you're scored, you're ranked, and then that recommendation that goes forward to the Public Service Commission, and then across to me, that they would have said that we've considered this matter, and our recommendation is so and so ought to be appointed to this post. And that's the way the process works. Not hearing you, Salo.
Unmute.
You're muted.
Thank you. With all that said, Mr. Bradley, what is being done to improve customer service across government offices?
Again, I don't want to sound like a stock record in response to these questions, because as I said to you earlier, we did a report back in, I think it was July of last year, which kind of laid out all of these concerns about customer service, efficiency, and what's not. In response to that, we came up with our transformation plan, and it set out concerns about improving customer service. So if you look at that transformation plan, one of the objectives in there is to have a customer service charter for the entire public service. So therefore, whenever you walk in the government department, you will see clearly published in each government department what you can expect as a customer. You can be expected to be treated with courtesy. Your queries will be addressed within a particular period of time. When you call, you get a response. So there's just a whole idea of laying out customer service, what you can expect right. And if you have a complaint, here's where you go to address that complaint, right? Secondly, we've done extensive customer service training. We've engaged, the Chamber of Commerce has assisted us. We've had the Caribbean Tourism Organization come in and assist us. They would have done some training with the frontline staff of ASPA, Immigration, Customs, and ASPA, in terms of frontline, how we greet guests and so forth. We've done extensive training with the Anguilla Chamber of Commerce when it comes to customer service. So this is something we intend to stay at, to stay on, because it's a real issue. I've heard the stories. I've had certain experiences myself, and that was captured in the transformation plan as well. And I'm hoping that, because remember, the plan goes out to 2030. We're not going to get it all. We're not going to get it all right, but at least we do have a clear roadmap as to how we intend to address these issues. So again, I don't disagree with any of the questions you're raising, any of the points you're making, because I think when you talk to 200 plus people from all across, they will, and Anguillan will tell you the truth. And we didn't shy away from it, which is why that report was published. So you can see that we didn't duck the issues, we didn't shy away from it. And it was a very, it's like putting a mirror up to yourself. It's a very healthy reflection of what people feel and think about the public service and what we think about ourselves. But not only that, but there was a clear, incredible plan on how those issues should be addressed. So I really would encourage your listeners, your viewers, and I'll provide a link before the end of the session to go and look at the report, look at the transformation plan, and I'm pretty certain that you will see that a lot of the issues people are concerned about were A, picked up in the report back in 2005, and B, have been incorporated into how we plan to address those things.
All right. Myself and Vanya, we started by interrogating you a bit there. I still have some more questions, but we have our guests there with us in the person of Mr. Ruan and Mr. Hayden Hughes. So I guess they would like to, pose a question or two to you, if you don't mind.
Of course. Hayden is my neighbor, my cousin. Grew up with him. 2 boys from South who did well. So happy to be on here with Mr. Hughes, and Mr. Ruan I've known for quite a while as well. We've had some professional differences over the years, but we've always maintained a very cordial and respectful relationship, and I think I very much appreciate that. When I need advice on construction, I call Harold. He comes by and he says, "Look, you need to do this, you need to do that," and so we've never had an awkward person that comes. So I have a lot of respect for Mr. Ruan and for Mr. Hughes as well. So I'm very happy that I'm here with both of them.
Let's hope that you're not on the string of tastes restaurant. Mr. Hughes, would you want me to go first or you go first?
You go ahead, Harold. Mr. Hughes, step away for a minute.
Okay, so Mr. Bradley.
Yes, sir.
As it relates to one of the key planks of your public service reform, I think plank 1, you spoke about the whole element of trust. And you must understand that trust is a special, unique currency. You would agree?
I certainly would agree on that.
And
yes.
I will go further by saying that by extension, even though the governor is directly responsible for the police department, and if I'm wrong, you could correct me.
No, you are correct.
Still, you still have some degree of hands in the whole administrative process because you're part of the governor's office. Would you say I'm correct?
Correct, that's a fact.
Now, I have heard from very reliable sources an allegation regarding the general conduct. I would not really describe them as a white police, but let's be a little kinder and say the Metropolitan Police goes around in the Angolan community and tell the civilian people that they must not give to the so-called Caribbean police any information regarding any crime because they are corrupt. That's an allegation, by the way. Now, if this is correct, or if this is true, how will you in your job function in conjunction with the governor go about bringing corrective actions to this very critical situation? Because it would seem to me, if that exists, it tells us clearly why the police department does not succeed in breaking critical crimes that exist in our country, in particular as it relates to the gun violence.
Again, thank you very much for that question, Harold. I'm going to say a couple of things in response to that. Number one, I would be very, very disappointed to know that colleagues we would have invited from the UK to assist us in dealing with this serious situation are out there representing such things about our local force, guys men in uniform who work very hard. So I'm very disappointed if that would turn out to be so. Number two, there is a professional standards unit that is part of the RAPF where concerns of this nature can be brought and they have been addressed. Number three, there have been some instances where concerns have been raised about some of our colleagues from the UK, and the commissioner has taken immediate action to have those persons dealt with. So what I'm saying is that if these allegations are proven, they're dealt with swiftly. I know of at least 2 instances where those officers were sent back to the UK in short order for certain concerns that were raised and so forth. Thirdly, the other thing that's a bit awkward, but I have to say it out loud, that this whole idea of us having the corruption in the RAPF, those concerns didn't start just yesterday, you see, and we ourselves have to be mindful of how we speak about our local officers and our RAPF as well, and how we as a public, why is it we're refusing to cooperate with the, even before we invited the folks from the UK to come and help us with the situation, the fact that we ourselves are quite reluctant to offer information to the police for various reasons, over the many years. And I know this commission has been working very hard to rebuild the trust of the Angolan community. I think he's been successful in some respects in doing that. The other thing is we have this 911, the line you can call and give information to. Why are people not using it? If you're concerned about the RAP corruption, why are people not using those other anonymous sources? So that's what I would say in response to that, Mr. Ruan, in terms of how we've addressed those things in the past and how we continue to address them going forward. Once those things are proven, the commissioner has proven that he has dealt with those matters quite swiftly.
Let me ask on that question there. Is there what do you call a commission board or something that if you have a complaint about a police officer or the department as a whole?
There's a professional standards unit that's set up within the department.
Well, that's not. I mean, outside, I'm talking about.
Hello?
You can't go to. You can't carry cheese to the rat. I mean, I'm talking about an outside independent board.
No,
You can't come out complain on somebody to your mother. You got to go to outside.
No, I take your point. But no, there is outside of that mechanism. If you have something, sure you can write to me, write to the governor. That happens all the time. People send stuff. People raise allegations all the time. So, in terms of a board, no, there's no external board external to the RAPF.
Right. Well, the governor go against their own people. So I've experienced that myself, and the governor pretty much was useless in the situation. But how are you done? Are you like Marcelo? You done?
No. I want to move on with another question, but you was compliment the question that I asked him, so it's granted you the courtesy if we had the authority to go ahead and meet to the bone.
I just want to be clear though, because I'm getting a little uncomfortable. We're straying away from the core of what we're here to discuss, which is the public sector transformation. That's the premise on which I'm on this show. So I want to make it clear to you and your listeners that that's the main reason why I'm here. I don't mind fielding other questions, you know what I mean? But when we get to the point of the governor being useless and what's not, I do have a concern about that type of rhetoric. That's not what I'm here for at all. I just want to make that clear.
Okay. Could I ask another question?
Sure.
Mr. Bradley,
I take a question.
I have been doing some research on the way in which a commissioner of police is selected in the United Kingdom, of which we regard as our mother country today. And I have noted, if I can read and understand correctly, that the commissioner of police in the United Kingdom is selected by the community, of which, in my view, is a very fair and transparent method of selection. Now, tell me if I'm correct, isn't the commissioner of police in Anguilla, maybe the overseas territories, by extension, selected by the governor or the governor's office?
Yeah, and under the Constitution, the governor makes that appointment, yes. However, there is a very robust process that it goes on for these positions. They advertise far and wide. A panel is compiled of the governor and other persons, including some members of the community and some from the PSC, from the Public Service Commission as well. And there's quite a robust process that's involved in that, including an interview, a presentation, background check, references, and so forth. So there's quite a bit that goes into it. Again, I could tie this back to the public sector program in terms of ensuring that persons are recruited based on merit and ability, not anything else. So I think that's what you're suggesting. I'm not too sure when you say the community selects the commissioner. I'm not too sure what that means in real life. All I can speak to is that how we recruit in the public service, and any position in the public service is quite, we put people through their paces.
Well, what I'm saying, the community, it means that professionals from the community, they are guided to spearhead the operation or the process. So it's not just like you're going into an election and one man, one vote, but I get the impression like it goes through that sort of process. The reason why I ask you that question, Mr. Bradley, that me, in my view, believe that if, for example, it is known, and of course it is, that the governor is responsible for the selection predominantly of a particular position, in this case, the commissioner of police. In my view, the commissioner of police will, in essence, feel that he or she owes an obligation to an extent. That's my view. But if you have a broad-based committee, like the Public Service Commission, that that goes forward and make this selection. I know they make recommendation, if I'm correct. The Public Service Commission.
Right. So
and then the final call will be on the remit of the governor.
Yeah, I mean, remember, constitutionally, the governor makes the appointment. But what I'm saying is, there is a pretty robust process that goes into that, providing advice and so forth, in terms of running the interviews, looking at the presentations and so forth, to make sure that who we interview and who's ultimately selected, there's broad consensus around the panel. So it's not the governor making the ultimate selection by themselves, or me when it comes to public service, permanent secretaries and myself. There's always a panel. There's always a robust discussion, and there's always objective criteria on which these decisions are made. So it's not just somebody sitting in a room and deciding, I like this person, I'm gonna hire them to be whatever the case would be. And secondly, it's pretty clear that the commissioner is operationally independent from this office. Nobody can tell the commissioner who to go and lock up, who not to lock up, and who to release and who not to release. So,
should not.
Hold on. So the whole idea of whoever makes the appointment, the person has an obligation to. I think we have to believe more in the integrity and the independence of persons in these positions. You know, we have to. The system collapses if we don't.
But what is very strange to Mr. Bradley is that, straight in your face, that our current commissioner of police had a tenure of 2 years, if I could remember correct. In my view, as a man from civil society, has not really seen or known any start of transformation that first tenure really brought to the island of Anguilla. As a matter of fact, I would say this, under his watch, there was multiple murders. And furthermore, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think anyone was hurt. So, in my view, to give someone like that another tenure, and that tenure, to me, is very disheartening to the people of Anguilla.
Well,
in my view.
You have your view. I completely disagree with you. I think Commissioner Clark is doing a fantastic job. I think he's made significant improvements in terms of professionalizing the police force. A lot of effort has gone into recruitment and building up a modern and effective police force. The second thing we Angolans need to be careful of too is, what are we doing to assist and support the RAPF in solving these crimes? Because don't tell me people in the community don't know what's going on and who's doing what. So it's very easy to sit there and be critical of the commissioner and the men and women of the RAPF. But I think we, as an Anguillan community, need to take a hard look at ourselves as well, in terms of, number one, being perpetrators, and number two, covering up for those same perpetrators. So I think we need to be mindful of those two issues as well. But I do think Mr. Clark has my full support. I think he's doing a good job as far as the RAPF is concerned. Now, again, I think we're straying far from this transformation stuff. We really are. But I can't have it be said that anyway.
But see, Mr. Brown, the last question, and then I will yield probably to the parliamentary representative for District 6. You see, the problem with this, I open, remember, talk about the planks.
Yes.
You always must remember your subject, the subject matter. The subject matter here are the planks of reform. So if we want to go in such short side on instead of head on, we ain't going nowhere. Please. So if you, in my view, if I see something in a particular light, the onus will be as me as a member of civil society to express that. I'm not blaming anyone for anything. It's my view. And of course, that's your constitutional right.
I respect that.
A right to express your view in a very cordial manner.
I certainly respect your view.
Right. So we are dealing now, and you went back and talked about you don't know why. We as people in the civil societies may be guilty of not contributing to really eradicating or mitigating what happened in our community. But we spoke about the currency of trust. So there's a prerequisite to that achievement. And the prerequisite will be to the building of trust in our community.
The point was
it is not even there internally.
Right. What I'm saying is these trust issues were around for a very, very long time.
No. We're trying to get better. So don't worry about the past. We are here now. We are dealing with current, not the past. We want to make Anguilla a better place.
Which is why I'm trying really hard for us to focus on a transformation plan that we're moving the public service in the right direction, including the RAPF, to rebuild the trust of this community. That's why I'm really trying to focus on that, because there's a lot of work that's happened that's been laid out in that plan, so forth, to rebuild the trust of this community in every aspect of it. You said you had another question.
So therefore, you want the community to cooperate with the police department, but you don't want the community to help select their commissioner of police.
I never said that I don't want the community to help select. Don't put words on the store. I did not say that.
No, I didn't say you said that, Mr.
I laid out to you what the process is for recruiting these appointments. I laid out to you what the process is. But
Yeah.
I
I'm saying we are transformation, so I would like that to be part and parcel of the transformation. I humbly suggest.
Yeah, go back to you, Solo. Go back to you, Solo.
All right. I think the parliamentarian representative for District 6, I don't know if he wanted to chime in a little bit here.
No, not really. I'm just enjoying the discussion.
enjoying the series.
I'm just enjoying it. I mean, listen, I served in government for just about 10 years. And I know there's some bad eggs, but I know there's a lot of talented, really good public servants. And also, even in the case of those bad eggs, it's not as if they don't know their job. You know, they're extremely well trained. They know their job. They choose to not do their job, and sometimes overexert their authority in some instances. But for the most part, the Anguilla Public Service is an extremely great public service. And I want to say this, right? In the context of independence, and there's a country in Asia called Singapore. And many years ago, when Singapore moved towards independence, it was a poverty-stricken country, really poor. People were living in abstract poverty. Over 21% of the people were homeless. It was in a really bad state. But one of the things that the British government did while they were there is to have a very good public service, a well-trained public service. And that was one of the foundations in which Lee Hong Yoo was able to build upon. So I think in Anguilla's context, we also have a very, very well-trained public service. How do you get all of them to do their jobs? That's another story. But it's not unique to Anguilla, because, you know, DOGE in the United States, where Elon Musk was brought on by the Trump administration, they slashed the public service too. It was not a surgical procedure, it was slash and burn. You used a dull masher to do that. But in the case of Anguilla, one of the questions came up earlier about whether or not there was too many public servants or not enough public servants. And I do agree with the deputy governor. In a lot of instances, there's not enough. And in some instances, there are too many. And in some instances, there's more than enough, but it's just a small group is pulling all the weight while others just float along to get along. So one of the things that really surprised me when I first got into government back in 2010 was the fact that there was no criteria in how you grade somebody. I know when I work in the private sector, especially in the hospitality sector, you have these appraisals every end of the year. And these appraisals were significant. Everybody was appraised. And raises or no raises or terminations would happen based on these appraisals. And there was a total lack of a process of appraising public servants. So you have public servants, like for the first day when I got there just before 8. And the first person strolling probably around 8:15, you know, and it went on like that. And I was kind of taken aback at that time. But, you know, eventually, once you work in a system for a while, you get used to it and you start to become blind to it. But the reality is that for the large part, we have a very good public service. I think, I don't know how you're going to get everybody to pull their weight. That's a huge task, because the reality is one of the most difficult things that I've found, even working in the private sector, is managing our own people. You know, that's a real challenge in managing our own people. And a lot of people, they may be in managerial positions in the public service, but they're still afraid to manage their own people. A senior public officer would prefer to do it themselves rather than attempt to discipline a public servant. And then the reality is that even when you have public servants who are not doing their job, who are not showing up to work, who are stealing, doing whatever, it's still a very difficult process in terms of disciplining and terminating that public servant. I think that's the question maybe should go to the deputy governor. How do you address these type of situations? Because these have been happening long before him, probably before he was born.
First of all, thank you very much for your compliment about the public service, Mr. Hughes. Very happy to hear that. Going back to your Singapore point, I was very fortunate to have visited Singapore. Not last year, the year before, 2024. Every year there's an annual government summit. It was myself, deputy governor from the Turks and Caicos Islands, and a representative from the deputy governor's office in the Cayman Islands. And I think that was quite eye-opening for three of us in terms of how effective and efficient the public service in Singapore operates. And we did spend some time at the conference, but also with certain officials from the Singapore government. We went visited certain facilities and certain institutions about how they train, how they develop, how they groom their public service. We took a lot of that stuff back to our territories, and it found its way into the transformation plan. On the accountability point, you're absolutely right. I think in my time, I do find that to be quite a challenge, but I understand that, again, that's not unique to us here in Anguilla. We had a trainer in from Jamaica last week, from Caracat. She was originally from Jamaica, PhD. I would have done this sort of work all over the world. And she was with our heads of department. She was explaining one of her experiences. It took her 1 year to dismiss somebody from the Jamaica Public Service. She said it's not unusual that when it comes to the public service, it's difficult by design to get people out of the public service. Having said that, we're now heavy in reviewing our public sector commission regulations and our general laws to look at exactly that, to make sure that we do have a clear, straightforward, and streamlined disciplinary process that is not intimidating, that folks can easily understand how the process works and so forth. Now, again, firing somebody, getting somebody is the last resort, because at the end of the day, what you really want is for people to perform and to produce. So the question is, are we doing all we can to ensure that person have the tools and resources to perform and produce? But I do agree with Mr. Hughes that when it comes to having those awkward conversations, that is where we seem to be very reluctant to engage. We know that person is underperforming, we know that person aren't doing the right thing, but for whatever reason, we just simply are very reluctant to actually tackle people and so forth. One of the anecdotes I've heard is that the process is too difficult. So why do I want to take up a year dealing with this one underperforming individual when I have 5 other priorities that I need to take care of? That a lot of senior persons in the public service take on that logic that the time and the effort is going to take to address underperformance when there are other things I need to be focusing on. I think it's one of the challenges that we have to contend with. So we're hoping that with a new, improved, revised system that is much clearer, more straightforward, and less intimidating, that persons will be more will be more willing to engage and take on things like underperformance and disciplinary issues.
Mr. Bradley, I want to ask a quick question. Are we going to get rid of the term permanent servant? And also, how are we going to get
Did they get rid of what, Gavania?
the terminology permanent servant? PSs.
Permanent servant. Oh, permanent secretary.
Permanent secretary. Sorry, the PSs. And how are we going to get the civil servants to if they report directly to you, what is the role of the minister when it comes to the public service?
Well, if you got to go back to your constitution where it says clearly that the minister administers the business of the department, right? So the minister has operational responsibility for the department. However, when it comes to disciplinary and other administrative issues, that's where it comes across over to the deputy governor / the governor.
And the PS?
The PS is the most senior advisor in the ministry. That's the minister's right hand. They're the ones who are supposed to deliver and execute on the ministerial policy.
So you're saying that they're supposed to report and answer to the ministers then?
Yeah, it's a shared responsibility.
Right. Okay. And well, I mean, PS, that means a permanent. Why the job is permanent in a position like that?
But it doesn't mean that the job is. That's just a title as we refer to. And it's not unusual in Commonwealth countries for it to be referred as a permanent secretary. That's not an unusual term. Over in the Cayman Islands, they've now restyled that to be called a chief officer, but it's pretty much the same thing. So the term permanent secretary doesn't mean that the position is permanent. As a matter of fact, we've now moved to having them on contract. So everybody who's newly appointed to be a permanent secretary in Angola are appointed on a 5-year contract.
So we're hoping to change the title then.
Well, again, there's been no discussion about that. Has never been brought up, never been made a concern or issue about it. But you seem to have a concern about it.
I don't like the terminology.
You just don't like it, okay?
Just like the Common House in England. I mean, you got a Common House. You got
also, you need a House of Commons.
House of Commons and the House of Lords. You know, it's like it's still
back in the term permanent secretary is not unusual. You go across the region, across the Commonwealth. I think it was something that was adopted from the UK. If you go across the Commonwealth, you will see that term. The only time I've heard it referred to differently is in the Cayman Islands, where they refer to as chief officers.
Right. All right, so
all right. Now, let's take a look at digital transformation and modernization. Now, how far along is Anguilla in digitizing government services?
That's a very good question again. You're asking all the hard questions tonight, Selo. But I think we're very far along. I think if you look at the systems that we employ in government, we've got a new system, the MTS over there in Inland Revenue. We've just updated the land registry. That's totally digitized. We've got smart stream SIGTAS. We're now looking at a new border management for the immigration. We've had Asakuda over in customs and so forth. So there are a number of platforms that we've developed for government. Also, we've got a pretty robust IT system as well. I think Mr. Hayes and his team are doing a fantastic job in keeping us up and running online. We now use Office 365, Copilot, the whole host of tools we've been using. However, there's still I like to call it the last mile that we have to go in terms of having all of our services online. I think what we want to get to is things like applying for business licenses, applying for passports, those types of things. We'd like to have those processes move entirely online at some point. What we call a one-stop shop. I think Mr. Franklin and his team over at the Economic Development are working hard at that. They're now speaking with various vendors, various software developers on implementing such a system. Again, if you look at our transformation plan or roadmap, it does speak to that in terms of digitization and so forth. Actions 35 through 40, we speak to digitization and so forth. So there's quite a bit going on in terms of being technological sound.
Vanya, good. Thank you, Vanya, for taking me off of mute. I don't like being unmuted. It's like I have to come from behind. I don't like that.
Somehow you got a bad feedback, so I have to mute you. I don't know why. Whenever somebody's talk with you.
About, some stuff that you have in motion in terms of, I believe, properly getting them trained for this digital transformation. So what systems are in place to reduce bureaucracy and delays?
Bureaucracy and delays in terms of what?
You know how bureaucracy runs.
Correct, but in terms of are there specific processes you're talking about, whether it's a business license, a work permit, what is there anything specific you have a concern about?
Bureaucracy on a whole.
Right, I think a big part of that is digitalization. Because I find what we picked up in when we did our surveys back in 2025 is people don't like to run around to go to different departments to get different things done. You know, for instance, if you want to license your vehicle, you got to go down to Michael, have it inspected. Then they give you a piece of paper. You got to take it up to Inland Revenue to pay. You get your sticker. You know, why can't it all be done at the same place? Right. Again, I know Minister Vanderpool is looking hard at making that happen, to make it a one-stop shop for those sorts of things. So again, all of these things were captured in that 2025 report. People were very clear about the various challenges. I mean, you lumped it all in with the term bureaucracy, but people had some very specific instances. You know, why does customs close at 12 p.m. down in Road B? You know, people want to get business done. Why can't I pay all my taxes online? You know, why is it so difficult to clear goods from the post office? So all of these things were brought up, and I think the big push to digitize these services, I think, is probably what's going to make the biggest dent in reducing that bureaucracy.
Nice. I like how you put that. Now, in terms of human resource management, because we're here that I want to dissect the whole civil service transformation. So I am kind of looking at every little thing. I don't want to leave nothing unturned. We have you here in our midst, and we hope that you can better explain to us. So that's why I'm delving into some of these pertinent issues and matters. Now, how do you motivate and retain talented public servants?
I think one of the most obvious things is pay compensation, which is why the work that PricewaterhouseCoopers has just completed was so important. We've been waiting for that for quite a while, because as I said to you earlier, we restored salaries to what they were in 2008, about 2 years ago, but we're now in 2026. And it's a point I've made over and over. We're in 2026 and paying 2008 salaries. That's a non-starter, right? So when you talk about motivation and encouraging and trying to retain talent, you got to start there. How a person's rewarded for their effort. And if you were to tell a prospective employee, hey, come work for us in the public service, it's 2026 and we're going to pay you a salary that was based on 2008, I think you've already started wrong, right? So I think there's been a lot of work looking at the pay and compensation issue. In addition to that, we would have heard from the public servants themselves. What they want is the new challenges, new opportunities, and so forth, for training and so forth. So that's why we did the leadership training, because that's one of the things they said they wanted, you know, in terms of the quality of leadership in the public service. They said needed to be addressed. And again, I didn't exempt myself from that. Myself, the POMSECs, and the ministers, we all were put through our paces last week in terms of leadership and so forth. So nobody was immune from any of this. So I think in terms of retaining and motivating persons, those are two of the things I would point to in terms of what we've done immediately to kind of address those issues. Excuse me?
If you'll permit me to ask
Sure.
Mr. Bradley an extension to your question, I will do so. So, Mr. Bradley, you have indicated that you have in hand, if I get you correctly, the report from PricewaterhouseCoopers, correct?
Correct.
Now, I think if I was a public servant and now the part of the listening public, I will be listening eager to hear what is the next step or steps from the report being in hand, and what timeline will it take for the public servants to be compensated on their own. Because we're talking about the whole element of motivation.
That's fine. That's fine. It's totally fine. I mentioned that earlier. That's one of the things I mentioned. Yeah, a circular was put out. When he had the launch of our transformation plan back in, I think it was January, February, we spoke to it. I laid out the timelines, the next steps, and what's not. We have a WhatsApp channel that the public service have access to. We put it on that. We've done emails to kind of lay out the timeline for this report, and a circular went out to the public service about 2 weeks ago, which laid out all of those things and saying that the target implementation date is the 1st of May. That was already shared with the public service and in multiple forums. I can't quite know what the correct plural for that is, but that was shared widely, disseminated across the public service, so they know exactly what we're doing. So the target implementation date is the 1st of May. But again, as I said earlier, and I said to in my circular as well, that when you have over 1,000 persons going from one grading structure onto a new one, you have to be, because remember now, you could be in the same grade as me, but at a different progression point. Because let's say you're a graduate teacher. We could both be graduate teachers, but you would have been in the service for 4 years longer than me. So therefore, you're at a different point on the scale than someone who just came in. So you got people in the same grade at different progression points, and you multiply that across the public service, across departments, across 1,000 persons, and then you got to make sure that they accurately land where they're supposed to be on the new structure, right? So I think that was a bit of a challenge which we have managed to crack. So now once you've got that done, the next thing is to cost it. I mean, all of this was laid out because at the end of the day, it has to be sustainable. That's the most important thing. You know what I mean? Your consultant could propose whatever they want, but if it's not sustainable or affordable in the long term, then that's quite a bit of a difficult position for us to be in. So again, there's quite a bit of work to go into that. It has gone into it, and our target implementation date is the 1st of May.
So, Mr. Bradley, this is the third time you did indicate the 1st of May. But I guess the public is still wanting to commit to 2026 or 2027 or 2028 as the case may be. Is it 2026?
Yeah, May 2026. Good. You catch me, Mr. Rowan. You catch me. Good point. Yeah, May the 1st, 2026.
Thank you very much.
That's all.
Labor Day. That's a good man. Labor Day.
One thing, Mr. Bradley, is that Rowan don't let nothing pass at all. Let me tell you that. He is one of the things that I admire him for. He's a keen listener, and we usually use cricketing terms. He bats from the crease. So, I just want to let you know that.
I have a very healthy respect for Mr. Rowan, and I'm sure our friend he'll tell you about the challenges him and I have had over the years. And again, as I said, the fact of the matter is we can still have a very amicable social conversation. And if I ask him a question about construction, he's been to my house to look at, give me advice. So what I like is he doesn't conflate issues. That's its own issue. But on this other thing, we ain't got no problem at all. So I must commend him for that kind of approach, because at the end of the day, we don't have to muddle up the different spheres. You can have a problem professionally, but
you should not cross lanes unnecessarily.
Yeah, I got you.
I am with my interrogation. Is there a succession plan for key leadership roles, Mr. Bradley?
You're asking all the good questions, Cello. You're asking all the good questions. And what I can say, and the timing is very appropriate as well. But like I said, I spent a week with the permanent secretaries and about 20-something department heads at different grades from all across the public service. We spent a week in a very intense leadership session with CARICAD. We had a consultant in from Jamaica, and one of the sessions was dedicated to POMSEC and ministers as well. So basically, we spent all of last week in some very intense leadership training. And one of the points that I made, and again, this is all public information, that over the next 5 years, we'll need to recruit 4 permanent secretaries, right? Because of folks who are retiring and moving on and so forth. But at least 4 of them are going to be retiring between now and 2030. So we need to recruit 4 permanent secretaries. Secondly, is again, it's all publicly known, my extension goes up to the end of 2027. What happens after that is not up to me entirely. I've got to consult with my daughter, Morgan. She's 10 years old. And if she says, Daddy, I think you should go for it, we'll have to have one. My point is I've got to have my own internal discussion with my family. And of course, somebody here has got to talk to somebody back in London, and there's got to be a process and what's not. So my point is I have no idea what's going to happen after December 2027. So my point, to come back to your point, so I was saying to my colleagues during that training that at this point in time, all I can do is make sure that whoever comes behind me is ready for that job. So whether it's permanent secretary or deputy governor, which is why we're putting so much emphasis on developing and training and making sure that we have high quality leadership when it comes to the Angular Public Service. So that's the only thing I can say at this point. So in terms of succession planning, at this point in time, we just want to make sure that we have a wide pool of persons to pull from when that time comes.
Now, in terms of conflicts, how are conflicts and workplace grievances handled?
In terms of, you mean interpersonal conflicts?
Workplace and grievances, yeah.
Right. First of all, right now, not good, to be quite frank, and that's if you read the current version of General Orders, it starts off as a grievance and then it ends up going into like it's an appeal, right? And that's a challenge in and of itself. So even if you had an issue and you were to read it, it starts off talking about how to make an appeal, but then later on it switches into the language of an appeal, right? You want to appeal some decision, but they're two separate things. Appealing a decision and raising a grievance are two different things, but yet that chapter in General Orders conflates the two. So one of the things we've done a lot of work with our consultants is to kind of deconflate those issues and what's not, to make it clear. If you have a grievance, this is how you handle it. If you want to appeal a decision, here's how you handle it. However, when something comes up, we try to resolve those things informally. So we expect that if you have a concern about your conditions of employment, we expect that the first thing you'll do is speak with your supervisor to say, hey, I have a concern. This is not working for me. Colleagues are not getting along, or the case would be. We expect that manager supervisor to kind of, as you say, gather the facts, to understand precisely what the challenge is in terms of why is it there's conflict in the workplace, and try to resolve it informally in the first instance, right? Because maybe just requires a conversation or a meeting between the individuals to understand the varying perspectives. And if that doesn't work, then you get into something a bit more formal, because thereafter you're interfering with the rights of other people, and that's a whole of a kettle of fish. But the expectation is in the first instance that when grievances are brought to the attention of a manager or supervisor, that they try to resolve it informally by meeting with the person concerned and hoping that one or two conversations can actually address it. But if not, then it has to move to something a bit more formal, like an investigation or whatever the case may be. And then a determination will need to be made as to what is really going on. And then some decisions will have to be made, whether persons have to be separated, or if there's something more sinister, then that could lead to some disciplinary action as well.
So a question, I guess you handle the equal rights issues as well on staff.
The equal rights issues, what do you mean?
I mean, like if they feel like they've been picked on for gender reasons or any kind of particular reason by a supervisor.
Well, I mean, ultimately that would make its way to me, but there is a process with it as well. Like I said, in the first instance, remember, everything doesn't come to me right away. And that's the thing I want folks to understand, that there is a chain of command, there is a process for things being escalated, which is why the line managers are the force, are the gatekeepers, really. If something is happening, somebody's feel picked on, and your first point of call is to your line manager. And if your line manager is the one picking on you, then you go to the person up next. But there's got to be some indication that you've actually tried to resolve the issue before. Is
there a 3-strike system, like you get written up 3 times, you could get dismissed, or is that kind of system in place?
The way it progresses, you got a oral warning, a written warning, and then there's a final written warning, meaning that this is it. This is your last written warning. After this, it's dismissal.
Okay. That's all.
All right. Are there enough opportunities for professional development?
I would say yes. And that's one of the things that I'm getting an echo.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I would say yes, and that's one of the things that this new report by PricewaterhouseCoopers addresses. You know, how do you make sure that persons from a technical stream, that executive stream, and so forth, how are they to progress? So yes, we do have a very small and very young public service. I'm at the top of the public service. I'm not even 50 yet. You know, I don't intend to be the longest serving deputy governor in the history of Angola. But the point is, there are lots of young persons around the public service in some very key positions. And if you were to extrapolate their retirement date, they'll be there forever, which means that the persons below them could feel a bit stifled. So we look at things like rotating department heads every now and then, persons below them, giving persons a chance to show their range and experience different things. So the whole host of, and there's training opportunities. So there's quite a bit that we've done to make sure that persons remain engaged and challenged. Also, every now and then we have a few instances we've done, especially the repatriation program in terms of during COVID to bring people back to Angola and so forth. That was comprised of a cross section of persons from across the public service. So we try to find various ways to keep people interested and engaged in the work.
I like that. I like that. Now, you know, I couldn't let you go without some pertinent questions, which I've been asking you all night, really.
You've been bringing it, Solo. You've been bringing it.
You must be saying to yourself, well, you said it before. You said the hard question, but you know, I'm known as the instigator and the agitator. So you expect that, right?
Yeah. Again, as the head of the public service, I should be able to explain myself to the people of Angola, what I'm doing with their tax dollars. They get paid every month. They get rid of public servant, and I should be able to explain to them what I'm doing to earn that money. So I have no problem.
The role within the British overseas territory. I'm saying a British overseas territory. How does your role differ from that of elected officials?
Well, I'm trying to. How does my role differ? Remember, I'm not elected. First of all, I'm not elected. The process of me getting here, I'm not elected, right? That's the first thing. Number two, I'm the titular head of the public service. I have special responsibility for disaster management on the audit committee. I also sit in parliament and as a full member of executive council. So in that regard, I share similar responsibilities to the ministers when it comes to parliament in executive council. The difference is I don't run a ministry like the ministers do. Right? So my job is as head of the public service. I'm apolitical as the rest of the public service, with political and neutral. My job is to make sure that the public service delivers on the agenda of the government of the day. That's my main responsibility, and that's the only reason why the public service exists. It doesn't exist to do anything else other than deliver on the agenda and the mandate of the elected government. So how I differ, the key difference would be the ministers elected, they're the ones that drive and implement policy, or shape and direct policy. And my job as head of the public service is to ensure that policy, as directed by the minister and leader of government business, is implemented in the most effective and efficient way possible.
In terms of your responsibility, maintaining good governance standards, you want to speak to that?
Sure. In terms of good, like as I said earlier, we do have everything flows from the Constitution. And when it comes to the public service, I think Section 66 of the Constitution kind of sets up the Public Service Commission and what's not. We do have the Public Service Commission regulations. We do have the Public Service Integrity Board Act, and also General Order. So my job is to make sure that those rules and regulations are followed to the T. So, and when there are breaches, they are pointed out. So we have to make sure that things are done decently and in order.
So then, question: how do you balance local priorities with the UK expectation?
That's a very easy one. You know, they as far as I can tell, and in my experience, the UK's interests and Angola's interests are aligned. I think the UK wants to see Angola succeed. They want to see Angola thrive. They want to see Angola do well. So when it comes to UK interests, they're not in conflict with anything. I've never been in a position where my interest, Angola's interest was in conflict with the UK's interest. I think it's pretty much aligned from the time I was been in office.
And are you saying then that the UK does not play a direct role in the civil service reform?
Dave, when you said direct rule, what do you mean? Because again, we did this report. We talked to Angolans up the length and breadth of Angola, public servants. As I said, we discussed this with 200 and something different persons. We've done surveys and what's not, and the results of that report that was published back in July, August of last year were reflected in the transformation map that was laid out in for us here now. We launched in January of 2026. So as far as the UK playing a direct role, I don't understand quite what does that mean in real life, because again, all of these are locally homegrown issues and ideas that have been knocking around for quite a while. So none of these issues none of these proposals have come from outside or have been imposed from on high. These are all things that we have come up with ourselves. And the UK has been quite supportive. Sorry, let me just get the light back in my office. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, motion.
We're sitting still for a while, so the light went off in the office. So as far as they're playing a direct role, what I can say is the governor has been very supportive, and the consultant has been, as you said before, was funded by the UK. But again, in terms of the initiatives themselves, these were all homegrown initiatives. They were not imposed or imported from anywhere else.
Well, we have to look at a lot of things. You know, Mr. Bradley, I could really stay here all night and perhaps drill you with some of the pertinent questions, you know, because there's so much. When Mr. Harrigan called me and he said, you know, we're going to be talking about civil servants transformation, I said, you know, we got to do our homework and we got to get down, because if we're going to have Mr. Bradley in there, we have to really interrogate him, because there's a lot of things that goes on in the civil service that we are not privy to and stuff like that. So I just want to ask some of the pertinent questions, like the governance and oversight. Mr. Bradley, how do you ensure transparency within the public service?
When it comes to decision making, right, we are all, again, everything flows from the Constitution, right? In addition to that, we have the Public Service Commission regulations that kind of lays out how decisions are to be made, the process for those decisions and so forth. And those things are well documented. So there is, in my view, transparency in that, for instance, the public won't see what advice would come to me from the Public Service Commission. The public won't see what advice came from a department head, the Public Service Commission, with regard to certain things. So you won't be privy to the advice that goes in terms of the decision, right? However, you can take it for granted that the process has been followed. Now, one of the things we would like to do going forward in terms of how the Public Service Commission operates is to be like I call them like a guardian of the process, to make sure that the question you're asking, no, you know, how do you satisfy yourself that a decision was taken correctly and so forth. As of now, it's quite difficult to give people that assurance, because again, the public is just not privy to the advice that comes in, and so you wouldn't see what recommendation came to me in terms of certain appointments and what's not. But I have to satisfy myself. I have to trust people in the system that these recommendations are coming. They've done their due diligence and the scrutiny, and I'm getting good, clear, comprehensive advice.
But Mr. Bradley, one thing I recognize is that you never hear publicly of any disciplinary action against any public servant or police officers. Why is that?
You wouldn't. That's again. Those are internal processes. You wouldn't hear that. I mean, I wouldn't know who got dismissed or who disciplined on that 4 seasons at Captain Luca. Similarly, you wouldn't hear who was dismissed or disciplined here in the public service.
But they're not public. They're not private versus public. I mean, right. If an officer steals a car, we should know he get arrested, or he's been dismissed, or he's been on leave.
Those are public processes. If somebody's been suspended from the employment, that's one thing. But if you're brought to court, even charged with a crime, you're arrested, you're brought to court, you're put on trial. That's a public facing issue. So the public will see fully well what has happened.
Like there was an issue where a police officer would park on the sidewalk by a bank, and you'd never heard of a disciplinary action, even though the police department have summons other people, personal people for that same incident. You never hear of the police officers civil servants that do wrong get disciplined.
But that's what I'm saying. That's an internal matter. So you won't. I don't know of any other public service or any other organization that publishes the results of their disciplinary actions with staff. I've never heard that happen before.
Okay.
What, if any, mechanisms exist to prevent corruption or misconduct?
Two things. One is the Public Service Integrity Board, which reviews these issues, whether you want to do a second job or start a business or whatever the case may be. That is reviewed by the Public Service Integrity Board, and they make a determination as to whether or not a conflict exists. And if one does exist, is it possible for it to be mitigated? They provide advice to me on those matters. And that's one of the key areas in which we address those issues of public conflicts and corruption. The other thing we do is we try to separate functions when it comes to accounting and finance as well. The person who is inputting an invoice is not the one cutting the check. So we try to have a segregation of duties. But even with the best supervision, sometimes, and again, I'm not going to sugarcoat and I do like to say cut style. We've heard about glaring instances of theft and fraud which has happened in the government, but we do have robust. We do have an audit function. We do have procurement and what's not that are designed to capture these things, and when they happen to point and put systems in place to prevent these things from happening. But every now and then, again, I'm not gonna sit here and say that it hasn't happened, that never happened. But those are some of the measures that we have in place to kind of address corruption and conflict of interest to ensure that persons are doing things correctly.
What about whistleblowing protection and stuff like that?
If you look at the transformation plan, does mention whistleblower protection. Not the transformation plan, and the rewrite of our general orders. We have discussed that with the consultant to ensure that there is some sort of protection put in there for persons who bring these things to the fore. So that's one of the things we intend to capture in that. She's already been tasked with incorporating that. So again, it's absent from what we have now, but very much will form a part of what we're going to revise our general orders to incorporate.
And as far as accepting gifts from public, any kind of limit on that?
There's already a thing in place. You have to register those gifts with the Treasury every year. A return comes out, and you have to fill that form out and send it to the Treasury. You list the gift, who you got it from, and the amount of the value of the gift, and so forth. That is filed with the Treasury on a regular basis. Every year, every department gets that form to fill out.
I mean, the individual themselves who work for the government, is there like a standard, like you can't accept gifts from public without,
No, it's not a cross the board thing. No, it's
because
not.
That also encourages corruption. I mean, if you pay you on the table,
True, but again, anybody whether you are employee or the department, but the fact is you're supposed to account for any gifts you receive in your official capacity. So that form captures all of that. So the expectation is anybody working in the department, if you receive the gift, then you're supposed to report it to the department, and that return goes back to the treasurer, so we have an idea of what's happening. Okay.
Let me just piggyback a little bit there on what Vanya said, and I would just want to, take it a little further in asking you, Mr. Bradley, how independent is the civil service from political influence?
Very independent. That's something I take seriously. That's a bright red line that I don't cross. And I think I've worked with 3 premiers. I think they've all respected my position on that. There's never been an issue. No, what I will say, if you go back to your constitution, under Section 66, in addition to the Public Service Commission, for department heads and above, I do have to consult with the premier. That's a constitutional requirement. But consultation is not direction or dictation or advice. It just simply says, I consult, in addition to the Public Service Commission, I consult with the premier on those senior appointments, department heads and above, as set out in the Constitution. That's a requirement.
Trying to wrap up now, but and left Harrigan and Ruwan if they have any other questions to pose. But I want to ask you, Mr. Bradley, what is the biggest challenge facing the civil service today?
I would have to say we're just operating on a very archaic and outdated framework. It's been around probably prior. The version I have is from 1956, July of 1956, and I'm pretty sure it was around before that. So I think one of our biggest challenges is we're not operating with the most up-to-date and modern framework. I think that's the single biggest challenge, that the structures are not reflective of a modern, nimble, effective public service, which is why this transformation plan is so crucial in order to get us to that point. Because we have a very discerning and demanding public. They want more, they expect more from the public service, as they should, and we have to be able to respond to that in a meaningful way. So I'd say that seems to be the biggest challenge. You can't get away from the pay and compensation issue as well. That has affected morale significantly. Again, as I said earlier, it's 2026 and we're paying people in 2008 salaries. I mean, that's a nonstop. Let's not be, you can't duck around that. I can't think of one product or service that you were paying a certain price for in 2008 and you're paying that same price 18 years later. It's just not. So I think those are two of the biggest challenges, in terms of the old structures from a demanding public, and then you got folks who are not properly compensated.
Well, Mr. Bradley, if I would dig in here, when I really think about that situation regarding the public servants and their remuneration, that, is really undercut, so to speak. If you really was to contemplate on the revised Labor Relations Act,
right,
they seek to constructive dismissal. Do you understand that could, in essence, constitute form part of constituting constructive dismissal?
What would form part of constructive dismissal? I'm not clear.
But what you're implying is that they're underpaid. So the real wages has been reduced significantly over that gap.
I take your point, which is why we are addressing it. That's the whole point of doing the PwC this report by PricewaterhouseCoopers. That is the whole point to address that issue, because we hadn't done this exercise since 2005, 2007. It's long overdue. Sure. So I take your point completely. I might not necessarily agree with going all the way to constructive dismissal. I mean, because of the economic situation.
I would not teach you to either.
We had to hold strain for some obvious reasons, but I mean, it's. I have to repeat, we're paying people in 2026 on 2008 salaries. That is a problem. I think anybody can straight face can say that does not warrant some sort of examination.
Not at all.
It's gross last year.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if I was to ask two more cordial questions and then shut up, I will ask you this, based on my opening statement. If, for example, tomorrow the public secretary responsible for finance will say, well, okay, I think that it's high time that I step out and follow my superior, the deputy governor, and relate to the people of Anguilla by attempting at least to educate them on the whole aspects of the wheels of government. Is there a bureaucratic process that has to be followed prior to the public secretary going on a forum such as this?
No, and I've said to them, I would encourage it, to be quite frank, because as a senior public servant, you're able to public, you should be able to go on the radio and explain the policies you're implementing, the things the department does and what's not. That's absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, that's healthy. You do want the public to understand what you're doing in your name. However, I must say though, I think the concern has always been that sometimes these conversations stray into areas outside of their comfort zone, i.e. politics, right? I think that's the fear and that's the danger, that people are concerned. I'll be quite frank, I think Vanya shared a WhatsApp with me earlier today. Was it a WhatsApp or a Facebook post?
A WhatsApp.
A WhatsApp, basically. And
about the answers?
Right.
The Lions Den.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about. And these two bosses called me up just to say, look, boy, be careful, you brave going on, and so there's this aura.
But you're pretty good at keeping it into perspective. That's the whole idea.
Well, that was what I was making. That from my view, I would encourage senior public servants, especially, to talk to the media about public service matters, about the things they're doing, about the policies they're implementing. Because remember, at the end of the day, public service is apolitical. Our job is simply to support and implement the policies of the government of the day. But I've also seen how when people do that well, they get labeled as being attached to a particular party or not. But as our trainer was saying to us last week, that no, that's a good permanent secretary, a good department head. Your job is to form a relationship with your minister to make sure that you're delivering on what that minister's policies is. And when things change, that's what you do. That's the nature of the job. You don't. Nobody elected any of us.
Right.
Nobody elected any of us. So our job is to make sure that and you should be able to speak comfortably on government policy without sounding as if you're supporting one party or another. And I think it's important that hosts understand that when you do invite persons onto those shows, that the conversation is about public policy and don't force public servants into having to engage or respond to anything political.
Another question: how would you differentiate politics as opposed to current affairs? So, in other words, you have something that implicates politicians, but it currently affects the masses, the people in Anguilla. How would you differentiate from the politics as opposed to the current affairs?
I think it comes down to how the question is phrased. If you ask me, if I'm the permanent secretary for finance, and you're going to come and ask me, do you think this particular tax policy is a good idea or a bad idea? That's the kind of question I'm talking about. You're forcing somebody to basically challenge or disagree with government policy. Because remember, sometimes even if you personally disagree with a particular policy, your job is to give your minister the best advice. But at the end of the day, when you come out to the public, your job is to defend and support it. So I think that is where the nuance comes in. You see, because you're supposed to support your job is to implement the policy of the government of the day.
But so suppose Mr. Bradley have a position now where the political director is doing something unconstitutional.
Well, again, that's the kind of thing you don't want to force a public servant into a conversation like that. You don't want to force her a question about whether or not you think the position is constitutional or not. So I think that's the point. That's the point I'm trying to make. That is clearly a political question. If you're going to have a public servant come on there to agree with you that yes, my minister did something unconstitutional, that's a recipe for disaster.
That's interesting. One more question, Mr. Bradley. Public servants being a part or partaking of part of the political process. Political process in terms, for example, there are public servants that have interest in, let's say, for example, there is a campaign, a political campaign. How far, if any place, where will a public servant will be allowed or permitted under the regulations to be involved in the political process, of which I deem should be constitutional in that regard?
You mean in terms of running for office?
No, not running for office. I'm talking about being part of the campaign process.
Right. So as of now, under the current general orders, you can be a member of a party. You can go to party meetings. You can go to political rallies and so forth. But what you cannot do is be
take the platform.
An executive member of the party or take the platform. You're correct. You're absolutely. Having said that, the jurisprudence from around the region says something slightly different, in that you have a constitutional right to free speech. But in terms of the more senior you are, then you have to expect it will come with some restrictions, right? So if you can't have somebody that's a senior ranks like a PS or department head openly challenging or campaigning against a particular candidate and somehow expect, going back to the point you made earlier about trust, and somehow you're expecting whoever's successful to come and work with that same individual and trust.
It will be compromised. Yeah.
So I think so in terms of the whole idea of free speech is a very fundamental constitutional right, but we have to appreciate that the public service is a very unique entity and it functions based on trust and what's not. So it's quite a bit of a challenge in terms of, but particularly for this, at the senior ranks, where there must be an appreciation that when you get to a certain level, the closer you are to the policy making and the minister, the more responsible you have to be with your speech.
Thank you.
Right, but what about if they're in public, like a public gathering, not a campaign gathering, but just a few people around and you're just bashing the minister, and talking about the minister, telling you, influencing how to vote.
Right, I'm saying you can't actively campaign.
Right.
You shouldn't.
You have an opinion.
You have an opinion. You can share your opinion with your friends, and once it's not, you know what I mean.
Right.
All I'm saying is that the more senior you are, the more responsible you need to be with your speech. That's the point I'm talking about. At the end of the day, the Constitution does guarantee the right to free speech. But if you don't want to be, if you want a career in the public service, you don't want to be branded as somebody political motivated. You know what I mean? You want to be somebody who's known as a straight shooter who gives good advice, politically neutral. And it's all about doing, giving your best expertise and a good minister will recognize that as well.
Yeah. What about let me ask you this question: how you feel about positions like deputy governor, chief of police being on a ballot for election?
I've never thought of that before, to be quite frank. To make these things political, you're undermining one of the major planks of the public service, which is the public service in our setup should be politically neutral, right? That's the difficulty, So if the person's on their campaign, and then obviously you have a stake in it. Yeah, so I think you got to keep that separate. However, I know in some countries, in addition to the deputy governor, there's also the cabinet secretary who works closely with whoever's the head of the public service to kind of make sure that the government's agenda is implemented. So there are various ways of addressing that. I know you're familiar with the federal style system in the U.S. And once an administration comes in, all the people go out. And they go through this every
Right, yeah.
4 years, and I think there's pros and cons to both sides. I don't make a judgment one way or the other, but I know in Commonwealth setup, we go across the Commonwealth territories. This is how we do it. The civil service is a permanent setup.
Right.
Job is to be apolitical. It kind of
To work
support.
with both in the political. What about as far as how soon is this reform going to be implemented? And also, is there intention to shrink, at least combine more departments as more to be more flexible, share more resources to be more efficient?
We did that in 2011. There was an efficiency review done in 2011. One of the things we looked at was exactly that, in terms of whether or not there was more to be done. Because remember, we had done agriculture, fisheries, environment is now combined into the Department of Natural Resources. So that was considered, and what's not. Whether or not we do anything else like that, I think that's not entirely up to me, because at the end of the day, that's the structure of government. And another thing we need to appreciate is the structure of government is entirely within the purview of the sitting premier, in terms of how you want to structure ministries, who's going to have which portfolio, and what's. That's not a matter that I can take on in and of itself. I'd have to consult with the premier on doing anything like that. And then, of course, election changes, a new government may come in and decide we want to do something differently. I mean, that's up to them, completely within their purview. But
Do they have a say as where the permanent sec goes as well, or that's done by you, solely by you?
No, remember, going back to the point I made earlier, there's a consultation.
Right,
It's not a direction, it's not advice or anything like that. It's a consultation. Right? And of course, we want to have a harmonious working relationship. So yeah, you take the view on board. I've had a very, a common issue that we had back in 2016. Again, it played out publicly when we made a reshuffle of the permanent secretaries. Yeah. The then government did not like it, and they responded in the way they did constitutionally. So again, these things happen. But I think it's a lot of very harsh lessons from my experience. Again, my tenure has not been perfect, and I've lost my
I laugh because I was going to make reference to that. I know you don't want to call the governor's name, but Mr. Banks was a politician, right? But I think that member from District 6 are trying to get in for some time now, so I don't know if we allow him to get in. I think he was.
He's not there. He's not on camera. Go ahead, Seldon.
Oh, that's the Seldon. Oh, take down from mute. Yeah. All right. I think we have interrogated
the
Deputy Governor, Mr. Bradley, quite a bit here this afternoon, quite a bit here this evening. We still have the representative for District 6. He's not on the program as a spectator, so we're gonna wrap up with Mr. Bradley now, and then we are gonna pose some questions to Mr. Hayden Hughes, but we thank him for being here still and gotten involved in, as he said, he was enjoying the discourse, so to speak. So, Mr. Bradley, if the civil service is not transformed within the next few years, who should be held responsible?
The public service will in the next couple of years. Our transformation plan takes us up to 2030, and we are not for turning. We are moving ahead with this. So the whole idea of this not happening, I don't even want to consider it, to be quite frank. I think I'm very much enthused and excited about, especially the feedback coming from the leadership training we did this week. I think this persons across the public service. Again, this is all of this was shaped by them. They had input, and I didn't wake up one morning with these bright ideas. We didn't have this imposed from London or the UK or wherever else. These are all homegrown initiatives. This wasn't imported or imposed, and I think the persons here in Angola and the public service are the major stakeholders. The farm work gets done, and I'm very excited and enthused about how they've approached it. and I do look forward to leading the public service through this process, through to at least until the end of 2027. So once we have the momentum, I think I'm quite comfortable knowing that we have a person who can come behind and pick up the baton and take it across the finish line.
Yeah, well, thank you too, Mr. Bradley, for being here. I think that you're doing an awesome job, and I hope that you do reapply. I think the changes you made was efficient, and combining the departments showed to be very efficient as well. So, I want to give you kudos on your job so far. Well done.
Thank you, Mr. Harrigan. And again, I want to thank you and your co-hosts and colleagues for having me on this evening. I know we got a little tense at certain points, but that's the way it is, man. I certainly enjoy.
It's called in your face, That's the way it is.
The show lived up to its name, what I mean?
Always.
Because like I said, in addition to that WhatsApp you sent me, quite a people messaged me saying, "Boy, you going on with Van?" But I must say,
we got some ministers afraid to come on still,
I must say, you guys treated me in a dignified manner, treated me fairly.
Softly.
I said fairly. Yeah.
We understand the meaning of courtesy. You invite someone to your house, you don't really ask them to stay by the door.
But again, thank you all very much. It's been a very engaging and useful conversation, and I very much appreciate the time.
And before I leave, Mr. Bradley, I just hope that, if I remember correctly, in the public service thing, the women, they are given 13 weeks maternity leave. I think that very much on the main side, and that is something very critical to encourage the growth of the population, whereby that the ladies will be given more time with their babies at home and be able to have leverage instead of hustling back on the job because of their commitments. I think you need to be much kinder.
You said it should be more than 13 weeks?
Yeah.
13 weeks, I think I could remember.
Yeah, that's what it is, yes.
And you should also consider giving the father a couple of weeks as well.
You get 2 weeks. You get
3 weeks. 3 weeks, I think. 3 weeks paternity and 13 weeks maternity.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Vanya,
Thank you,
take me off of mute. Let me
All right,
take the
Mr.
opportunity to thank Mr. Bradley for affording of his time to join us here this evening in what I deemed or called a very informative discussion as we took a look at civil service transformation. So he was able to bring us up to speed with some of the some of the things happening. He was able to dispense some much valid information here tonight with us. And I know that the general public was enlightened by the discussion here tonight. Mr. Bradley, we want to wish you all the best in your future endeavor. And, you're doing a fantastic job, as I would say. Just keep up the good works. All right. With that said,
Costello, you opened overcharge last week. Now you're drive us to the hotel again this week.
well, you have Mr. Hayden Hughes. We didn't invite him to the program to be a spectator, so we've got to ask him a few questions. Mr. Hughes, thank you so much for being there. And Vanya, please don't mute my phone. I don't really like that.
No, the problem is somehow whenever somebody talking, when you talk, it gets a feedback. It's something with your phone. I don't know what it is.
Keep it open right now, please.
I open it now.
All right. Mr. Hughes, I want to thank you so much for joining us here this evening. Now, you are on the opposition side of the bench, as they would say. Which side do you enjoy best? That's just a little Typical question.
That's a very interesting question because I spent two times, one appointed and one elected, on the government side, and this is my first foray on the opposition benches. It's a very strange question because after being minister, I really enjoyed it because I felt as if I was getting things that those before me wanted to get done and were finally getting done. Those before me, persons such as James Donald Webster, who spoke about the development of a commercial airport and seaports and road network and so forth, water. I felt as if we are moving in the right direction as it relates to the eradication of dirt roads, to rehabilitate our present Spine Road and the airport and a number of different projects and so forth. I felt accomplished to say the least. There's a lot of persons who came before us, and I often say that none of the things that we accomplish as a whole, I accomplished as part of the administration, was something that we came up with. There was an original idea. It was all ideas that came before us. And today, when I drive around Anguilla and I see persons with personalized license plates, that is an idea that came from Patterson, DJ Genie. He came to me with that idea, and I was able to get it through Executive Council, was able to get it through Parliament, and was able to get the regulations done so that persons can have personalized license plates today. The whole concept of having the Blowing Point Ferry Terminal, that was not my idea. Back in 1998, I believe it is, 2008, the Anguilla United Front had a model building down in Blowing Point for a brand new Blowing Point Ferry Terminal. And they also had applied to the Caribbean Development Bank for funding for this ferry terminal. And in 2009, the Caribbean Development Bank did agree to the funding for the Blowing Point Ferry Terminal. And the British government stepped in and blocked that development. So the airport, the idea to develop the airport, like I said, James Donald Webster, initially he wanted to develop an airport in Brimagin, and Emil Gums and Hubert Hughes also looked at Brimagin for the development of the airport. As you know, in 2000, those plans were abandoned when the Osborne Fleming administration of Osborne Fleming and Victor Banks, the United Front administration, they decided to abandon the Brimagin site and forego the development of an airport there, and to do some cosmetic works at the Wall Blake Airport, the now Clayton J. Lloyd International Airport. So obviously, if we wanted to develop a true commercial transatlantic airport, we would have to develop the Wall Blake site. And so Curtis Richardson, I remember Curtis Richardson when he was a Minister of Infrastructure, he spoke a lot about the airport, and he also got into big trouble for going to the media and saying the British government had agreed to fund the airport to the tune of $100 million or 100 million pounds. I don't remember whether it was pounds or dollars. But he got in a lot of trouble for making that statement because the British government had never agreed to that at that time, even though the British government, prior to Curtis Richardson, did agree to help develop the airport, then reneged on that agreement. And then in 1984, Emil Gums and Albino Lekaj wrote to the government of Taiwan for the airport assistance. And then Hubert, while he was the chief minister back in 1999, he had gotten an agreement from the French government to develop the airport. And like I said, that was abandoned. But and when Boris Johnson came to Anguilla in September of 2017, he said in the public domain that they will help to develop the airport. He think that was the most important piece of infrastructure for Anguilla. And Victor Banks, who was the leader of the country at the time, in September 27th or thereabout, he made an announcement that they were going forward and extending the runway to 6,000 feet. As you know, the British government again reneged on that promise. And when we came to office, they also promised us on multiple occasions that they would do so only to renege on that promise. So when we were in London, myself and Premier Webster, we put it to the British government that you're not funding, you have reneged on your promises for all of these years. So you need to get out of our way and allow us to use our own funds to develop our airport. Because even though Anguilla raises its own money, the British government still had a measure of say at the time, because there's a certain number of thresholds that Anguilla needed to meet in order to have financial independence to be able to determine how they can spend your money. And we did not meet that threshold yet. I think we met that threshold very late in 2025. So right now, this administration do not have to go to the British for any permission as it relates to funding or financing in the project. So they're in a very strong position right now, thanks to the leadership of Dr. Webster and Anguilla Progressive Movement, who made the tough decisions to place Anguilla in this strong financial and independent position. Now, it came under severe criticism by the Cora-led opposition, because they were talking about Kyle Hodge in particular, was saying that we had done all of this on the backs of the people. It's still on the backs of the people. And where's the relief?
Now, let me ask you though, why there's been a lot of talk really, and why do we see the present administration of the day trying to make a case for the house in the UK? They're doing this at all costs.
I don't think that they're making the case. I don't think that they're making the case.
Because why I'm saying that?
I think they need to try to make the case.
Yeah, okay.
They are adamant that they must buy this expensive house in England. I think that they should make the case to the people of Anguilla, because there's no justification, in my opinion, for this house in England. I had the privilege of traveling with Dr. Webster to the Joint Ministerial Council meeting. And I know that there's absolutely no reason for us to buy that house, because it is not only the upfront cost. They have ring-fenced for some $16 million for this house, right? There's not only the upfront cost, but it's the ongoing tax and other obligations that comes along with buying an expensive old house in London. It's going to be the tune of millions of dollars to the taxpayers of Anguilla, on the backs of the people of Anguilla who live on this country, who pay taxes in this country. Now, the thing is that for me, I think that charity always begins at home, right? Before you take care of England, you should be taking care of Anguilla. And there's a lot of needs in Anguilla. I saw, for example, the abandonment of the Northley Road, and the abandonment of the Phillips Drive Road, and the abandonment of the government administration building, the abandonment of so many projects here in Anguilla, and ring-fencing the same money that would have done these projects in Anguilla to go and spend it in England. I saw the leader of the government business, Cora Richardson Hodge, on the Sandy Hill Road. Now, the Sandy Hill Road was not her idea. It was not her proposal. They did not survey, design, was financed under the Anguilla United Front. The idea, actually, someone who's sitting here on this panel today is the one who first came to me about the Sandy Hill Road. And that is Harold One. And Carol, you can tell me that I'm lying if I'm lying.
Yeah, absolutely correct. We spoke at length while you was in office about how they have the toss for the people of District 2 to get that road surface, because it has some serious erosion, and does have serious erosion, especially with the coastline. You must remember that we are tourist oriented, and we will hate to know, because of the amount of marl being washed down into the water, that the sand turns to silt. That was the case that I came to you and tried to build that case, and you say you'll work on it, and that's what you was assiduously doing in the theme of things with the network of road that you had on the schedule to pave if it was returned to office.
Yep. So before we left office back in 2024, the road was designed, it was surveyed, and in the 2025 budget, it was budgeted for. So when I see Cora and the United Front operatives on the road acting as if they were the ones who came up with the concept, they're the ones who went through it. No, that is not true. That is certainly not true. As a matter of fact, I would like persons to point to me to any tangible accomplishment by this administration. And some persons may say, okay, well, they got rid of GST. They didn't really get rid of GST because we pay GST. We now pay something called a general services tax of 13%. We pay a goods tax of 8% and a general services tax of 13%. The cost of living in Angola have increased because of that, because in the past, those who are GST registered, even like Ken's Barbecue, for example, Best Buy, Angola Trade, 9 of these companies, they had the ability to have a rebate based on their goods and services tax. Now there's no rebate. So that becomes an operating cost for the business. So that operating cost now is plugged into your cost of the items, goods and services that you provide. And they knew it going in because the consultant said that. Kyle Hodge knew it because he said on Class FM that all you have to do is spread it among your items in your business. So he knew that the cost would have gone up. But for them, it was probably a psychological victory. But there has been a knock-on effect, though, because Corey Justin Hodge, she said just last week that all the revenue heads of government are not performing optimally. And one of the revenue heads that are not performing optimally is customs duties. And the reason why customs duties is not operating optimally anymore is because of this goods and services tax that they have done, this general services tax and goods tax, because now there's no incentive for businesses to provide the correct invoices. They can now under-invoice. So the reality is that in an economy that is still doing well, and you cannot say that government coffers is not doing well, even though they don't give you the information freely. If you're thinking from these terms, right? And we have been having record-breaking tourism arrivals for the last 2-3 years. Record-breaking tourism arrivals. And every year, these tourism arrivals continue to grow. We have placed Angola in a strong position. I talk about Angola Progressive Movement as it relates to the .ai domain revenue. We weren't getting the revenue before, but in 2022, 2023, we started to do some work, some serious work on it, and we were able to now get a company in place that ensures that we get significant revenue from the .ai. So .ai revenue is growing exponentially. Tourism revenue is growing exponentially. Customs revenue is not. But if your tourism revenue is growing exponentially because you have more people coming to the island, it means that you have more consumption, which means that the businesses in Angola have to import more. So why is it the revenue is going down? So it goes back to a point that Vanya made. So and now, if that is the case, then you have to start to revisit the idea of customs duties. You know what I mean? You have to revisit the idea of, should we have customs duties? Because if businesses are under invoicing and the revenue is going down, and we are making 12, 15, 20 million, 30 million from .ai a month, and we're making so much from the tourism plan, then why would we have customs duties? Why would we have property tax on billions? Why do we have a number of the things that we have? We can move to a Dubai state. When I say Dubai state, I mean a low tax to no tax jurisdiction because of our revenue. Because if you think about this, gentlemen, in 2010, government of Angola brought in about 155 million EC dollars for the whole year. .ai is going to double that maybe this year. That's .ai alone. You know, so the reality is in a country of 12,000 people, think about the things that the government of Angola can provide to the people of Angola in terms of physical infrastructure, which is important. Infrastructure, the development of the physical infrastructure of Angola is of paramount importance. That is number one importance for Angola, because we spoke earlier when Perrin Bradley was here on, and we spoke about the capacity of the public servants. But it's not only public service. Angola has a lot of college-educated forces. So we have local institutions such as the ACC, such as the satellite office for, I can't even call it a satellite office anymore, but the University of the West Indies in Angola and so forth. Then there's online courses. Torstens also, the Angola Progressive Movement put forward almost $4 million in scholarships, first time in over a decade. So many scholarships are being offered. Deanne Kentish Rogers had secured about 200 digital scholarships as well. So the reality is that in terms of a training and human needs capacity building, we have the ability to do so, but the physical infrastructure is of paramount importance. Now, if the Angola Progressive Movement was in office, the airport extension would have been almost a year in by now. right? The government administration building would have been at least 6 months in. So the construction sector would have been really, really vibrant to the point where there would have been no contractor in Anguilla without too much on their hands, if you understand what I'm saying. We should have brought another issue, which should have been the importation of workers. And now we need to look at ways and means to grow our population. We have a significant amount of Anguillians in the diaspora, right? We have over 6,000 Anguillians in England. We probably have another 6,000 in the United States, and then we have Anguillians scattered around the Caribbean. But what we have seen also is a reduction in the population of Anguilla. We have more births than deaths, but still we have a decline in population. I say the reason why I say we have a decline in population is that you look at the census for 2011, and then you look at the preliminary findings for 2025 in terms of the census numbers. And it seems as if we have a decline in population, which means that we have a net migration outward from Anguilla. And why is that? Because to me, Anguilla is a land of opportunity. You know, Anguilla is a land of opportunity, and I think that Anguilla is going to have even more opportunity if the government manage it right. Because there's something that's going on in the world right now that's having a global shift. And that is Iran emerging as a global power, America declining in the sphere of influence, and those Gulf states significantly falling off in terms of what they have been offering. Because you got to remember that Dubai was a major player in financial services and tourism, a major player, one of the biggest players in the world. We also have to recognize that Saudi Arabia was investing over $1 trillion in developing their tourism plan, lifted a 76-year ban on alcohol consumption just to generate tourism in terms of in Saudi Arabia. Now you have these Gulf states that's going to be decimated for a long time. What they have done in terms of the Middle East right now have brought a level of insecurity and uncertainty that they are not safe places anymore. And, you know, Iran have hit airports as well and hotels where they've figured that soldiers have been residing in. So the reality is that the safest place and the best place for tourism right now is going to be the Caribbean. And how we position ourselves in Anguilla is going to be very important in terms of our growth in the next phase of Anguilla's continued development.
But you don't think that the increase in tourism also has to do a lot with Jamaica being not fully open because of the hurricane?
No, I don't think it's Jamaica, because the reality is that the clientele that we receive and the clientele that Jamaica receive is a different type of clientele. Now, in terms of the day trippers, yes, because the day trippers for the most part goes to St. Martin, right? And then the experience in St. Martin is being able to travel to 3 countries in one day. So most of the folks who travel to St. Martin stay on the Dutch side. Most of them, significant number, and percentage of the persons who travel to St. Martin, stay in St. Martin, the Dutch side, and then they can travel to the French side. So they got the fact that, we've been to a French island, and then they jump on the boat and they come over to Anguilla for the day, and they enjoy Anguilla. So we get a significant amount of day trippers because of that. Now, those day trippers could very well be persons who may have gone to Jamaica, but I don't really think so, because Jamaica has a particular product, an all-inclusive product, that you find in Punta Cana and the Dominican Republic, a very similar product. And Dominican Republic, Punta Cana in particular, but the Dominican Republic on a whole, is the largest tourism destination in the entire Caribbean. The Dominican Republic received almost as much tourists into Dominican Republic as the entire Caribbean combined. You understand what I'm saying? So Anguilla product is a very niche product, and that is why we are positioned right in the right place to be able to take advantage of tourism growth going forward. We're in a right place, in the right space. Our airport is of importance. Our road network is of importance. Our electricity grid is of importance. And we got to talk about electricity and security of electricity.
And water too.
Water, of course. Absolutely. But you know, if you've been following the situation in the Middle East, you will notice they've been talking a lot about water and water plants, the reverse osmosis there, desalination, right? And the possibility of Trump attacking and hitting infrastructure in particular, which is a war crime. It is really a war crime. I've been reading up on it. It is a war crime. But hitting civilian infrastructure such as water plants. And Iran have said, okay, if you do that, then we will hit all of the water plants in the Gulf states, which means that everybody dies of thirst, right? Which is unfortunate. But the reality is that Anguilla still is in a good position as it relates to water because our water is derived from the sea and we are surrounded by the ocean. So we will always have the ability, once we keep our trains running, what you call the trains in our desalination plant running and so forth, we'll always have the ability to generate water. Even if all of the importation of water in Anguilla is cut off, we can generate water in Anguilla and we can really develop our water in Anguilla to the point where we probably can even export water. I mean, we have some of the best water in the world right here in Anguilla in the case of Arenal water.
But you don't see us having an issue as far as we get into the massive development of the airport. Now we'll be able to eventually, when you extend the runway to have bigger planes. We have infrastructure issues like reliable water, electricity grid. What we do in England as far as the cost of it to run an operate a hotel or a business, and also hospital. Capacity of beds.
The reality is that we spoke about that, or I spoke about that earlier, that all of this infrastructure need to be developed in terms of the hospital and so forth. But let us think about this for a minute, right, Vanya? You live in the United States, and I believe you work for FEMA. If you have the unfortunate and tragic experience of a jet carrying 200 people in Anguilla that crashes, right? And a few of them die. Not a lot of the people die. Just a couple of them die, but you have a lot of severe injuries. Because, when I became minister, I started watching all of these things. Very rarely do people survive from these jet crashes, right? But let us say some survive. Anguilla's hospital, no matter what capacity is, would not be able to handle the volume. And I say that because even in America, we have all of these facilities. You hear about persons being airlifted to another facility somewhere else in the US, right? So big old America with these big, huge hospitals, all of these services, you still have to airlift this person to that place. You still have to airlift that person to that place. So the reality is that a country of 12,000 people, will not have all of the services that you see in a country that has 350 million people. I mean, I know people are going to be very critical of what I'm saying here, but that's just the reality. You're not going to have every single service in a country that has 12,000 people.
So that's where the islands, that's where the Caribbean islands should come together, where you could probably utilize each other
But we do already. We do already, because we have Trinidad, we have the Cayman Islands. People go to St. Martin. St. Martin's come to Anguilla. You know what is strange, Rania and gentlemen? There are Anguillians who go to St. Martin for certain services in the medical arena. And it's St. Martiners who come to Anguilla for the same services in the same medical arena. And what I also find is that in the case of confidence, a lot of people are not confident in their own medical field, because a lot of Americans think that American healthcare system is the worst in the world. A lot of Americans think so. God forbid you have to have a child, especially if you're Black in America. The risk is so high. And this is data. We're not talking about guessing here. This is factual data, right? American healthcare system and American education system is not good. That is a fact. And I know there have been tourists who have come to Anguilla, have been to Anguilla, who have gone to our medical facilities in Anguilla and rave about them, how great they were, compared to what they have home in the United States. And there's a lot of people who travel outside of the United States for care. And you for example, down in Mexico, there are thousands of people who go into Mexico from the United States for dental care. Thousands. Daily.
Cost is expensive.
Yeah.
But what about as far as electricity? The cost to operate I'm sure if you look at supermarkets, to run a supermarket, the cost of electricity is what drives the cost of goods also up to a high price. All those things has to be addressed because if you're gonna bring people coming in, you gotta be able to bring a lot of supplies, and you have to be able to have a reasonable prices because it's still gonna be a price of the market.
Well, I don't know too much about our price in the market, and here's why I say that, right? Anguilla's average daily rate is not for the weak. The average daily rate have grown exponentially since 2010. Grown exponentially. But not only that, Evania, if you think about this, a tourist traveling to, let's say, Four Seasons, they have to pay the rate, whatever that daily rate is. They also have to pay 13% general services tax, right? And then they have to pay 18% service charge. 18%. Now, Four Seasons, which have one of the highest average daily rates in the region, they increase their service charge to 18%. And guess what? The occupancies went up. The occupancies went up. And when I was the Minister of Tourism, I know we met and we discussed the possibility of Four Seasons bringing their yacht to Anguilla 16 times a year, right? Starting in 2026. 16 times a year. That yacht caters for the top 1% of global earnings. So that's why I said Anguilla's position in the right place. And let me tell you why I don't think that we're going to be priced out of the market. So you have Anguilla that have all of these great properties, whether it's villas or whether it's the hotels that have tremendous average daily rates. Tremendous average daily rates. In the festive season, you have minimum night stays and so forth, right? But there's over 100 persons in Anguilla who have Airbnbs who are doing extremely well. And these Airbnbs are charging significantly less than the villas and the hotels. And it's not impacting negatively on the villa and hotel business, right? But it means that the wealth is being shared more around the country because of these Airbnbs. And like I said before, Anguilla have a particular brand of tourism that is really exceptional. Because the reality is that you can come into Anguilla, you can stay at Cap Juluca, and you can dine at Ben's Pit Shop, at Tasties, at Sharky's, at the Dune Preserve. You know what I mean? You can dine around. You can go and play golf over at Aurora. And you can go over to Silly Key, at the Sand Island, or Prickly Pear. There's so many things that you can enjoy. You can rent a moke, you can rent a bicycle, you can rent a moped, and you can really explore the island. That is a unique brand of tourism because you can't do it in many jurisdictions. You can't do it in Jamaica. You can't do it in Dominican Republic like that. Most of the hotels in Punta Cana and most of the hotels in Jamaica are all-inclusive. Even in places like St. Lucia and those places, they have a significant number of all-inclusive facilities, right? So in Anguilla, we don't have that, which is good, which means that persons around the island can benefit from the tourism plan.
Which makes sense, yeah. That's good.
So I don't have any fear of being priced out of the market, right? But what I have fear of is the cost of electricity exploding. Now, we have a minister, Joseph Van Der Poel, who said when he became the minister, first of all, in terms of the former CEO, he said, "Oh, we are trying to avoid bad blood and avoid a wrongful dismissal termination. That's why we reinstated him and so forth." But he also said this, that they were acquiring the Caracas Bay building in order to facilitate renewable energy integration. I don't even have any here, and I almost pulled my hair out. And then on top of that, they suspended two vital pieces of human resources from the company, in that of Peter Lementang and Steve Hodge, who have been a long-standing member. I'm sure he's been working there for over 20 years, and he even acted as CEO. A brilliant young man, an Anguillian from District 2, from the home of Corey Richardson Hodge. You know what I mean? And still on suspension. And up to now, we have not heard why they're suspended. But going back to the Caracas Bay building, right? The Caracas Bay building is an old building. When I was a little boy, I remember my mother buying a little bike there, a long seat bike for me. I was probably about 5 or 6 years old back then. I'm in my 50s now. So you know that building has to be over the 50 years old, even though externally may look good. Joseph Van Der Poel said that they will have that building operational January of 2026. In November of 2025, he reiterated that that building be fully operational by January of 2026. The building is a hollowed out shell. There was no need to purchase that building when there was a great plan that was done and land that was secured for a fit for purpose modern Anglican government administration building. And I dare say that the former CEO had a letter written to Chairman Jerome Roberts when Jerome Roberts had signaled that they were moving forward with the development of that facility. I don't know if you remember that, Harold.
Yes, it is April of 2022, I think. 2021.
21. I know it was during our term of office. But the reality is that I thought that was a bad decision, a really bad decision. And if I was minister, and I know persons like to say that there should be a separation between the minister and these statutory bodies, I don't believe in that. I believe that there's a time for interference. And I have interfered, and I can justify my interference at every single time, right? If I was a minister, that purchase could not happen. It could not happen. It could not happen, right? Sorry?
The restoration of that building alone is to bring it to purpose. It's going to cost a lot more.
It's going to be running into the millions of dollars, because you got to remember, when you buy a building that was built in the 1960s, right? The building was not built with modern data systems. It was not built with modern electrical and air conditioned systems and so forth. You have to build them all in. And if you are building a fit for purpose, now Harold is a contractor here. He can correct me if I'm wrong. The ceiling height would have been different because you'd have been thinking about central air condition, right?
That's correct.
There's so many different things that you'd have to consider in terms of a building like that.
Not only that, you must recognize that Anguilla is predominantly government buildings. They're suffering from a lot of mold, right? Putting in split units in that environment also creates avenue whereby you infest place with mold because of the contrast of temperatures.
Yes,
and to your point, if you put in the central air conditioning unit, we have balancing the airflow on a continuous basis, that will be stamped out. So listen, if I was to advise the board of Anglican, first of all, I have already advised Coro, Richardson Hodge, to remove this board. Categorically, they're useless. Useless. It's clear to see. And it's sad to know that these people will try, like the minister, try to blame the procurement board for holding back or halting the progress of work on this building. That is incorrect. It is clear to see that something been going on inappropriately with the former CEO of Anglican, which while it was stopped, hadn't they towed the lines of protocol and operating appropriately, the building would have never been there. Not only that, I am telling you, it's a fact that there are numerous members on that same board that is very adverse, and they do not have the appetite to move forward with renovation, the large-scale renovation of this building. And
stick up in there, Harold. Stick up in there, Harold. I got to ask a question. And this is a question for my own knowledge, because I have an opinion, but my opinion can change based on professional ideas, right? Don't you think that it would make sense to abandon the renovation of that building and go ahead with the development of the new building?
I am telling you, it's absolutely correct. For why it's what? With the 2.5 million that they invested, approximately 7 million EC, it is more worthwhile to leave that alone and probably use it for warehousing or certain things like that.
Yeah.
But it's a gross embarrassment to one, the company Anglican being 35 years old and going behind physically in an inappropriate space with not even appropriate parking. Because I don't know what the premier is talking. I don't know what the minister is speaking. Maybe they're smoking from the same pipe. I don't know. But what I do believe, however, is that when the premier will come to me to us in a meeting and said that the purchase of this property include 5 acres of land. When you check the register, and by the way, this building was purchased in July of 2025. An announcement was made by the then former CEO, but it only appeared on the register the 4th of December 2025. And a lot of things was going on during the interim that I will not really say on this platform. But what I could say, however, is that when the Premier in a meeting will say about these lands, I wonder what they're really talking about. Because the register had 1.25 acres of land. 1.25. When the minister on the 14th of June 2025 indicated on a talk show that one of the reasons why they went across the Caracas side by building to purchase it is because the size of the land adjacent to the ABC hardware has outgrown its purpose based on the size of the land. When the size of the land adjacent to the ABC that was leased by Anglec in June of 2002 is 1.52 acres of land. So that land on the register is more than 1/4 acre bigger than the lands that Caracas Boy building is sitting on. So these people have to account to the people of Anguilla, the stakeholders, not only the shareholders, but the stakeholders in general. Because you are moving, in essence, as the old people say, from a bread to a biscuit. The bread in this case would have been the development of an ultra-modern building adjacent to the ABC hardware. And what was so unique is that the staff was inclusive into the planning exercise of that proposed building. The building was being very modernized. And what is also full of hypocrisy is in that correspondence of April 2021, the then CEO says that they must produce buildings that are more friendly to the environment. So in other words, come up with this old arcade business with concrete, etc., and use another model of walls that will consume less energy to cool it. It was absolutely correct in that regard. But then how you could subsequently go across there and build and purchase an old derelict building on behalf of the shareholders and stakeholders at Anguilla, I think it's very unfortunate. And we must get to the bottom of this because this situation warrants an investigation. How could you abuse the assets of a company like that? It's abuse.
Well,
and the parties need to be dealt with.
But it's not too.
Let me tell you something.
It's not too late to change course, though, Harold. It's not too late to change course.
It's not too late, but you have to have the willpower. You have a premier there that, my God, I must claim, however, that I've been part and parcel of an election, but I'm totally disappointed in this woman. Totally. Because everything that you go to her with, you find something just to pacify her. And I'll say with reference to the hotshot, Steve Hodge, that is, Peter Lamontagne issue. When I took Mr. Hodge to a meeting at the Premier office, you know the pacification that she gave him? Well, Mr. Hodge, Steve, you must understand that people like Sherwin Williams, the CEO of ASPA, was home for about a year. This person was home for another period.
No, Sherwin Williams took vacation. I was a minister at the time. He took a vacation.
Well, that's what she said.
No, it was vacation. You cannot compare. But Harold, sorry, but you cannot compare a vacation and a suspension the same way. How could she make that comparison? I need to understand, how could she make such a comparison like that?
I said maybe she's not familiar with the truth. That's what I said.
Or maybe she's manipulating the truth.
Something.
Well, there's there's a choice, there's a chance.
However, the situation is
But
that
what do you think it would take for them to change course as it relates to this Anglo situation? What would you think it take Post Person to change course on this House and London situation? It got to be something for them to wake up and change course from these bad and tragic decisions that they're making.
the point is this.
And I know politically it don't make sense for me to try to help them to make the right decisions. But for Anguilla's sake, let me tell you something. God works in mysterious ways. And you see that bad situation that the world inherited in Iran because of the hooliganism of Trump? That was more than enough to wake up the government of the day and say, hey, why something is wrong? God is speaking to us. We have to tighten our belt. We have to shift course. We have to try to procure what we have because we don't know how long or how deep this tragic situation will happen with the world, especially with the escalation of oil prices, etc., which really stands off everything in the air. But the government within itself, under the circumstances, they are behaving very irresponsible. Very irresponsible. I mean, how could you have so much of domestic affairs that are outstanding to be dealt with, and you got to go invest these millions of dollars initially, and then subsequently to sustain the building is millions more. You don't know how deep it will go as well. It's very irresponsible. Very, very irresponsible. But I think there's hope. The hope is this. The board of Anglic is not unison. There's absolutely there's absolutely no question about it. You don't think so, Harold?
They aren't unison, trust me. Up to yesterday, I get some very strong reports from at least 2 members that are very, very embarrassed by what took place over there in Stony Ground. And they said, 1, they do not know what to do with the Peter Lamontagne, Steve Hart situation. And 2, they don't know what to do as it relates to the bad decision that they made out there in Stony Ground.
But those are 2 decisions that can be remedied. 1, you reinstate those 2 gentlemen. That's easy. That's easy. Put that aside. And then the second one, Anglic said that they had all of this money in reserves. Then now they need to, as you said before, use the Caracas Buy, since they already acquired it, for storage and warehousing, and move forward with the building of that new fit-for-purpose building.
I agree.
That's correct.
They use Marlins from East End, right, to develop the design and plans for that building, right? All they have to do is go back to him and say, hey, listen, we need you to brush this up and let us get moving on this. Yeah. And that shouldn't be difficult to do. It should not be difficult to do. So when it comes to for them to say, well, we don't know what to do, we tell them this is what they should do. In other words.
But here, even though you claim not to be a contractor, you're a builder. So you have a good knowledge about building. So what I'm saying is this. There's approved drawings. Approved drawings.
Right,
so if you got to do modifications going forward, the same approved drawings should work.
Yeah, easily.
There are already modifications in construction building.
Yes.
You know, so I don't know, but look how long the setback is now. Big setback. You don't know where these blind boys are going. They don't know. Big setback. And they are not setback for the government. It's setback for the people of Anguilla.
Yeah,
that's the sad thing. And that's the way we put people first.
And if you think about this, right, Joseph Van der Poel also announced that the Anglic has secured a multi-million-dollar loan for a renewable energy facility. So on top of the renewable energy facility that they have to do, they have to also make a decision as it relates to this office complex, right, at the same time. So it's almost like Germany opening 2 fronts, the Russian front and the Western front in terms of war. right? So it's a very precarious situation right now that Anglec is living in.
But guess what's to that end? The current plan, fossil fuel plan, did not have an expansion from February of 2009.
And you know it's already to its maximum.
But notwithstanding that, it would be interesting to note the sort of cost that the generation department at Anglec incurs in maintenance right now, right down there in Carto West. There's 5 Wadzilla fellows staying there, and they have been here a long time. And let me tell you something, my brother. Them fellas don't work for 2 pennies an hour.
I know.
So you should know, with the human resource aspect alone of those overhauls, with those sets breaking down ever so often. Why? Because the sets are tired. They are overutilized.
Yeah, they're overutilized.
There's not enough
Definitely overutilized.
There's not enough volume to rest the sets and rotate them. They have to continuously running the same set. And
the reality is that they need to bring in another gen set. And I know that before I left office, when I was a minister, there was plans to bring in another gen set. As a matter of fact, the old CEO had written to Mr. Lementang to tell him, hey, proceed with this gen set as well. So I don't know what happened in terms of proceeding with that gen set since then.
Yeah,
well,
he was quickly before
somebody told me that.
Off, right? You gotta. Well, just talk a little bit about the relief that the government gave us, the duty-free on freight, 3 months.
Wait, I think Harold was going to finish a point before we segue into that.
I'm gonna cut off in a minute.
You know, there's so many things wrong because, but you know, to Hayden's point, I think that we have some hope now. The minister of MIQ, who thinks he's a minister of Anglec, he ain't got a clue what's going on. He doesn't have a clue.
I agree with that.
He exceeds his authority, making pronouncements about Anglec, and he needs to desist from that practice. He doesn't understand what he's doing. He does not have the authority
I agree with
to
that.
make pronouncement for Anglec. Anglec is an independent, standalone entity, and based on the governance procedures manual, this chairman of the entity Anglec is the only one that authorized to make announcement on behalf of the Anguilla Electricity Company. No, even when it comes to the loan arrangement, why is the minister of MIQ making public announcements about the status of this loan? It's distasteful. Why he don't learn before he try to represent? It's awfully disgusting to hear as if he owns Anglec, or if he is responsible for the administration of Anglec. Anglec is an independent company. Why doesn't he keep out of it and interfering with the administration of the organization? It's something I can't understand. But Helen, let me tell you something. I must commend you very highly at this juncture, because you know very well that at some point in time when you was in office, how I kept your feet to the fire when it comes to this entity. And guess what? In spite of that, when you go on the air, you religiously commend me highly for standing up to the blind Anguilla United Front from disposing of the Anglec.
Yes.
Yes.
And you
and not only that, for never cutting off water when they owed millions and millions and millions of dollars. You know.
Because
I think when history is written, Harold, it must be noted of the job that you did in terms of being able to stand up to the entire Anguilla United Front administration to block them from disposing of Anglec. That would have been a tragic move.
But guess what? The same Anguilla United Front are now benefiting.
are now benefiting.
They're not
Exactly.
benefiting.
They need to erect a statue of you.
And you know what? The same minister on the so-called program
You there? Howard, you there? I'm not hearing you. Can you hear me, Hayden?
I can hear you.
Yeah, Howard went mute. Yeah.
I'm not seeing Harold, but you want to go to the issue of
Yeah, 3 months. We got a soon cut off, and just want to hear
so you want to speak about the Judas?
The 3 months relief. Yeah. How
Right. So just quickly, what I can say about that is that we support that position, but we think that it should be indefinite because that's something that you have been lobbying for a long time. It's so crazy that we here on a show today talking about things that both you and Harold have been lobbying for a long time, right? And also, I forget that Melo Cello was also a member of the ANGLIC board as well. But it's a convergence of interest here. but
I
yeah.
think it is interest in the best interest of the people of Anguilla. That's a very pivotal point. Because what I was saying before I cut off, I'm sorry about that, some sort of interference. The minister on the so-called to the facts program or whatever, just the facts, he indicated that ANGLIC is the only company in Anguilla that is purely owned by the people of Anguilla. But sad enough, the same minister did not relate the story of how it is retained as the only company in Anguilla that 100% Anguillan. So you see how disingenuous they are. Very disingenuous. But I said, I will repeat again, how elated I am to know, in spite of the accountability process that I always put against Mr. Hayden Hughes when he was minister responsible, he did never show me in the sort of bad blood. But these people, this is very sad. I did a lot to keep them up. And guess what? However they possibly can, they try to destroy me. But that ain't gonna happen. I promise you.
So you want to say anything?
You still have me muted?
I got the upload. You might get some bad feedback. I don't know why. You're the only one.
Question for you, Hayden.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hughes, may I say?
Hayden is fine.
No, but I like to do people with respect. With the impending increase to the GOA salaries, which is, long overdue. Will this be sustainable considering the volatile global climate, infrastructure projects, the runway expansion in the new hospital?
Yeah, I think so. I have a different view. A lot of people are conservative. I've always been a risk taker in terms of these things. That's why I was able to move forward with the Valley Main Road and all of these things, right? I'm always a risk taker. And I think that all the volatility in the world today is less than the volatility in the world in 1918 and 1919 and indeed 1933 to 1945, right? There's a lot less volatility in the world today than then. And I think that it will be sustainable because we have something that is not going to go away, and that is .ai. Yes, you may have some shocks and so forth. You will always have shocks. We know we had the dot-com bubble that burst and exploded, and people lost millions and millions of dollars. But the world bounced back. We've had Hurricane Donna in 1960. We bounced back. We've had Hurricane Lewis and Hurricane Lenny in 1995 and 1999. We bounced back. We had Hurricane Irma. We bounced back. We had COVID. We bounced back. We will always bounce back. Anguilla will always bounce back. The world will always bounce back. There was a time in the history where Croatia was a no play and you wouldn't go to Croatia. There was a time in the recent history, when Rwanda had a civil war when the Hutus and the Tutsis were killing each other in the streets. Today, Kigali is the world's most clean city, and it's a beautiful growing country. There was a time when you couldn't go to Colombia, right? And you see how Colombia is today. So the reality is that with .ai is going to be our saving grace. And I can see .ai growing to the point where we probably can be pulling in revenue to the government of Angola's coffers in excess of $1 billion in a few short years. $1 billion in a country of 12,000 people. So I believe we'll have the financial wherewithal to finance a lot of things, but we need to have a government that can lead and not a government that just is reactive all the time. Because if you think about this, right? When the banking case came up, Koro said they won't have any impact. Sorry, the premier, let me be respectful as you said. The premier, Koro Richardson Hart, said it won't have an impact on Angola. Only to later on say, well, you know, government just spent $1 million in legal fees and so forth. When the war in Iran break off, she said it won't impact Angola in any way. And only later on so we have a government by a leader that is visionless. No vision whatsoever. And they advertise it before the election. They don't have any big vision. People only can eat concrete, so you don't want to have no construction because you can't eat concrete. But no, like I said before, no government stays in office forever. And I believe that the Angola Progressive Movement is a government in waiting, and we'll be able to lead Angola into the next sphere of our prosperity and growth.
All right, Vanya. Now, Mr. Hughes, I heard you there, really. You said, yes, it can happen.
Yeah, I believe so.
You remember, will we be seeing a repeat of 2008?
No. And here's why. Here's the fundamental difference. In 2006, and first of all, right, when Osborne Fleming made a decision to increase the parliamentarian salaries, the government ministers' salaries, that was a good decision. And a lot of people may be critical of it, but it was a good decision because the ministers of government, Joseph Van Der Poel, Koro Richardson Hart, you can say whatever you want about it, but they should be paid and compensated well. And there's a reason for that. There's reasons for that, right? And I'm not in government. And I mean, you never know what's going to happen. Well, I may never get in government. So when I say these things, it's not to benefit me. Just like when I speak about electricity credits, it's not to benefit me. My house is not on Anglic, so it won't benefit me in any way whatsoever. You catch what I'm saying? So I'm talking about from a macro standpoint. The Osborne Fleming was not wrong in increasing the political directorate salaries because it's important. And a lot of people don't understand the importance of it. They find that Caribbean people in particular like to complain a lot about politicians' salaries. Now, if you look at Singapore, that made a decision to compensate their politicians well, their ministers well, and the top of the public service well, and had very strong anti-corruption legislation. That was a good decision because even though Singapore was poor, it still was rife with corruption under the British government. When it became independent and they started to make these transformations, it became one of the 5th least corrupt countries in the world. So we need to understand that, right? You cannot place people in power and then have them starve. If you place people in power and have them starve, the risk of corruption is going to happen. And people may cost me all they want, but I believe that because I see it happening in a number. I'm a student of history. Shelley Rogers Webster called me last week, the Honorable Minister of History, the Honorable Member of History or something along those lines, right? And I did not challenge her because I took it as a compliment. And I think that I'm a student of history for real. And I see what happened in countries that have had these situations where you had ministers of government not receiving any salaries or receiving very poor salaries, and then they decide to make all kind of nasty deals with these oil companies and rape their countries and so forth, right? So anyway, that's long-winded to say I believe it's sustainable because we have revenue streams that's going to be ongoing. Even in the case of global economic shocks, .ai is going to resist that. That's one. But in the case of a natural disaster, if government manages this country well, we will have the financial wherewithal to restore Angola without any external help in the case of a major act of God in terms of a hurricane hitting Angola again. Hopefully it never happens. But what we should be doing right now is building our resilience to ensure that when that does happen, whenever it happens, because it will happen, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 20 years, maybe in 40 years, it will happen. We will get hit with a hurricane again. All right? Maybe we need to start to build our resilience right now.
All right. We would have heard the reason why I posed that question to you there, Mr. Hughes, because we all remember 2008 and
but you see, in 2008, the problem then, right, is that a lot of the salary increases and the increase in expenditure was based on alien landholder license fees, work permit fees, and things like that, right? Which was not something that would have been sustainable. So it was a different scenario altogether. That AI is different. It's totally different. We received that AI in 1995. We didn't do anything with it for 30 years, right? So the reality is that it's going to continue to grow exponentially. I have done interviews while I was in government with a number of journalists, and since I've been out of government, I've done interviews on the issue of that AI. And believe it or not, Anguilla has been known as a tourism destination for decades, right? We had our first hotel in Lloyd's Guest House back in 1959. So we have been known as a tourism destination for decades. And there are some of these journalists who came to Anguilla, and I partook in interviews with them, did not know that Anguilla was a tourism destination, but they came to talk about that AI. And then they found out that Anguilla is a tourism destination. You understand something? So Anguilla's best days are still ahead, but we need to be resolute, we need to be intelligent, we need to be accepting, and we need to be able to accept ideas from those who do not support us, because it goes back to all the discussion that we had with Harold, right? When we talk about the Sand Hill Road. When Harold came to me about the Sand Hill Road, he was not a supporter of my government. He was not.
Absolutely
you understand what I'm saying? So not because somebody is not a supporter of your government, does that mean that you cannot take the ideas of those persons, because we do not have the monopoly on ideas, right? So we have to be able to listen to people. Like, I can tell you that nothing that I did as a minister of government was my idea. Nothing, absolutely nothing. So we must be able to listen, and that is important for us to be able to do.
Sure.
You spoke highly of the AI monies. We look back at the fact that Anguilla gained global attention through revenues linked to the AI domain, which should really take credit for this transformation. But in terms of safeguards, what would you put in place, or what safeguards should be in place to ensure transparency and accountability?
Well, I think that the Anguilla Progressive Movement made one of the biggest moves as it relates to that AI by putting it on tender and getting a company such as Identity Digital to manage it. That was very important, because there's monies that are still unaccounted for as it relates to that AI prior to Identity Digital. That's one. Secondly, the Anguilla Progressive Movement was in the process of developing a sovereign wealth fund to be able to accumulate funds while we do other things, to be able to accumulate funds from the AI for future generations and so forth, similar to what Singapore has done. We started the process. As you know, there's an election. And to this government's credit, last week, the Premier said they'll be continuing with the Anguilla Progressive Movement's thrust towards developing the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Now we're behind time because they decided to pause to reevaluate. So they paused to reevaluate and came back in 2026, 2027 with all of the ideas and all of the plans that was funded and in the legislative agenda by the Anguilla Progressive Movement. It's crazy. The road that leads from Cannonball to Lake Satellite and down to the Webster's Park, all of that was surveyed and designed and so forth under the Anguilla Progressive Movement. Now here they are coming back with it. The government administration believed that they were not planning to do it. Now they come back and say, well, we looked at it and we're going to be doing it. That's a $90 million investment. It was supposed to start in October of 2025, right? So now we don't know when it's going to start. But can you imagine government administration building, and because of a number of things that we are doing in terms of the Valley Main Road, which was important economic driver, right? And the airport development, we had a number of foreign direct investors coming to Anguilla and talking to the government of Anguilla. We were able to negotiate a number of memorandums of understanding, including one for Beach Enclave, which is a hotel that's going to be built just east of the Aurora Hotel on the Rendezvous Beach. And Beach Enclave have hotels in Turks and Caicos, and they're superb and have the highest rate in the Caribbean. So because of these investments, we were able to attract a number of investors. So when you have, and for me, open it up, free the economy, let it loose, no holding back, right? No holding back. As you can see, the marinas in full swing as well in terms of the development of the marina. All of these things, Dr. Webster was able to bring these people together in order to have the marina, right? He brought them together. Now, so the reality is that don't talk about your trickling and your pausing, your holding back to reevaluate. Let loose. Let the country loose. We need to build our population. So we even need to look at the way we look at immigration. We need to encourage Anguillians to come back to partake in the Anguilla's growth. And that is the way this rising tide will float all boats, you know. But we have to be aggressive about it. We have to be intentional about it. And we have to ensure that we listen.
You said, let loose the country.
Yep.
I like that. Now, we heard the minister spoke that...
Which minister?
Which minister? The minister responsible for the water. I'm gonna use that idea. Yeah, we heard that minister speak about the arrival of the pipes months ago. Now they are here sitting in the element for, you know, what's the situation there? What's going on there?
I don't know what. I don't know what the situation is, but what I can tell you is that under my leadership as the minister responsible for water, we started all that process. All the things that he's talking about right now, we started it. We brought back water into central government in order to ensure that it's viable, in order to make sure that it can pay its bills, because it was not even able to afford to pay for the generation of water. It was not even able to pay 7 Cs for the generation of water. You understand what I'm saying? It was not able to pay its electricity bills. Government, the Anguilla Progressive Movement Administration had to go to Executive Council to jump in several times to help pay their bills. Not help pay them, to basically pay their bills. So we brought it back into central government, right? Centralized it. And then we had a consultancy done, 2 consultancies done, as a matter of fact, one with Castalia and one with the Royal Engineers of England, right? To look at our water network and give us a plan in terms of moving forward with our water network and so forth. So we started the process. So all of the things that Kyle is speaking about today is a process that we started. He's riding now on the things that we started. Now, that is a good thing. I'm not going to knock him, but he needs to be more aggressive to get those pipes in the ground, because we know that we have to redo the water network. We know how we need to do it and where we need to do it from, where we need to start from. We know all of these things, right? You know, you have 3 tanks on there in Carito. You know, one of them probably never had a drop of water in it. Totally disconnected to the regular water network, just there for cosmetic purposes, if you ask me. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. For me, just get to it. Just get to it. I wasn't in Nigeria dancing on a stage on a frivolous trip. I was here on the island pushing every day. I never took a day vacation for the time I was in government. Not one day vacation. Not one.
Oh. Another question. Should the government ministers be included in the salary review?
Yes.
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 Okay. So
I believe so. I mean that's my opinions are unpopular opinion. But I believe it should be. I don't know if they're going to do it, because they were critical when we allowed the 15% cut to elapse. So maybe they don't think that they should be paid. So if they don't think it should be paid and they made the decision no, then I'll go along with their decision, right? I will support their decision. But my opinion is yes.
So the same formula, you're saying the same formula in terms of what metrics, you're saying the same formula is being used?
I don't know what I don't know if it's being considered. Government ministers being considered. I don't know that. I know when we were there, government ministers were not being considered. But what I would say is that they should be, but it should not be necessarily the same formula. You probably should consult with the CPA to see how best to go about it.
That's why I was saying that, Mr. Hughes, if they are included, that would be sort of unconditional. You see, at this time, considering that they already don't pay into the pension plan, the pension plan or the pension scheme.
That is easy to deal with. All you got to do is make a simple amendment to have them pay into the pension plan and so forth. But I'll say this. One of the reasons why I believe that the ministers of government should be compensated more too is this, right? There's persons who work in government who are paid more than the premier, right? And people may say, yeah, that's all right. I don't agree with that. The premier, Cora Richardson Hodge, she's the premier now, but next week it could be Vanya Harrigan, right? You never know. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but she is a premier. And I don't think that we should be looking at, oh, you're paying Cora Richardson Hodge $5. You should be looking at the office. I want to say this, right? And this may be controversial again. Sometimes I say controversial things. The other day Friday I was driving behind the premier's vehicle, right? And to be honest, I felt kind of bad because I think the premier's vehicle should be even better. Because the same vehicle that the premier is using, I see them being offered as rentals and taxes and so forth, right? The premier vehicle to me should be special. And I would have no qualms if the premier go and get a special vehicle. That's just me. Like I said, it'd be maybe controversial. But back to the salaries. The premier is responsible for a country. Whether they do a good job or a bad job, that's on the people. The people of Anguilla elected these people. The people elected these people. A country gets a government it deserves because that's who you elect. And that's the person who's in the office. So whether they do a good job or a bad job. If you look at Obama's job and you look at Trump's job, you'll see that two of them do two different jobs, but two of them compensated the same way, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars in security for each one of them a year. Hundreds of millions, right? So the reality is you got to look at an office. And when you think about persons who work in government departments, paid by government, who are getting paid more than the premier, that should not be the case. I'm not saying to reduce their salary, but I'm saying that the premier should be paid accordingly. That's just my opinion. I know it's not a popular opinion, but that's my opinion.
Thank you. I got two more questions. I want to look at the geopoliticals and the UK relations. Now, how are global geopolitical tensions affecting Anguilla or Anguilla's economy? Do you believe the UK government has been consistent and fair dealings with Anguilla?
No, has never been. Has never been from the time they brought a first slave to Anguilla to this day. Have never been. And they will never be. And don't expect them to be. You really can't expect them to be. I will never forget, right, when Governor Crouch brought a statement to the Executive Council on Russia. And when she read it out, I was I was cringing because we are not in the European war. When she finished, she said, don't expect us to say that because we're not going to say that. Because when I look around Anguilla during festive, I see Russian yachts pouring money into Anguilla's economy. I don't see no Ukrainian yachts. I hardly see any British yachts. I see Russian yachts pouring money in our economy. So you have your European war, that's fine, but we ain't getting in that, right? And the reality is that if you look at the cause of that Russian-Ukrainian war, you can't blame Russia. That's a fact. So I don't subscribe to these countries who try to bully other countries and do things to these countries, and when they have to retaliate, then they say they're bad people. You know what I mean? Because this stems from NATO and NATO's expansion. We don't want to go into that, but that's the reality, that's the truth. So at the end of the day, they may do what they want to do with Russia, but don't bring us into it. And then the British government still has powers over our external affairs. We can't even go to St. Martin and have a discussion with the prefect. If Corey Hudson had decide tomorrow, you know what? Let me go St. Martin and let me talk to the president of St. Martin, or the prefect, or the governor of that side. Can't even do it. The governor jumps in and says, no, you can't do that like that. Because we respond to external affairs. Things with the OECS and all of these things we can't do. When you go to these meetings and so forth, and you make a decision, Angola can't do it because the British government that agreed to it first. So I just wouldn't go. I ain't taking no trip just for trip's sake. I going on a trip that they're gonna come to a decision that because Angola's a colony of England, we can't make a decision. So why are you going burdening the taxpayers of Angola for? You know what I'm saying? So for me, we doing constitutional reform right now. It should be more than that. It should be more than just constitutional reform, because every time we do constitutional reform, we become weaker. Every time. Look at the history of our constitutional processes. Every time we do constitutional reform, the people of Angola become weaker. So, for me, I'll cut my neighbor's string and go my way. That's my view.
Okay, so you're saying then that there are claims of favoritism.
Oh yes, British government have always favored one side over the next. I know when we're in government, there are certain things that we wanted to do, right? And the governor will meet with Cora. It's a fact. And then she will come back and say, oh, you can't move forward with this because the opposition did not agree. It does not agree to this. And now, when Dr. Webster meets with the governor to talk about these things, the same governor would say, well, the government is elected and it's their policy decision to do this. You understand what I'm saying? This is fact.
So how much?
I'm saying it privately behind a closed door. I'm saying it openly.
Okay. How much autonomy should Angola realistically pursue?
All. Full autonomy to make our decisions. We gotta have the checks and balances and so forth, and the wherewithal to be able to ensure that we make sure that there's accountability. And we see that, we see independent countries that have a significant level of accountability. We've seen governments in independent countries lose cases, right? So we already know that even though you have autonomy, you can't have a banana republic run by some dictator in Angola. It just can't happen. Angolians will not allow any dictator to run the country.
Here's my final question for you. And it goes like, what is the biggest mistake made during your tenure?
The biggest mistake? Woo! I don't make mistakes all the time. Maybe something I said, could be something I said. Biggest mistake, I would say, losing friends. There's a number of persons who are lifelong friends who I lost during my tenure. And to tell you the truth, I ain't blaming myself. I'm not blaming myself. I can take blame. Like I said, I make a lot of mistakes. I can make blame. But I lost friends who I shouldn't have lost them as friends because I didn't do them anything. You understand what I'm saying? So that is one of the things that but we all lose friends, right? Throughout our lives. The people who are friends as kids won't be our friends as adults and vice versa. So
if you could change one policy decision, what would it be?
One policy decision. That we made when we were in government?
In general, I guess.
Of course.
I don't know, because I believe in the policy decisions that we made, including GST. I was a big opponent to GST initially, right? Big opponent. And even though it was forced initially, eventually, I wasn't an opponent of it anymore. You understand what I'm saying? I think we all were opponents to GST. I remember us going to Executive Council, gentlemen, and this GST bill that was given to us very early. And we walked out of the Executive Council. You understand what I'm saying? But when you got a situation when you're a non-self-governing territory and you're a colony, and it's going to be done to you or by you, you make the decision to do it for yourself, because it to you is a lot worse than being done by you. And I harken back to 2001. In 2001, the British government wanted the Osborne Fleming government to make homosexuality legal, to abandon the legislation that speaks to boogerism and capital punishment and corporal punishment. And Osborne Fleming resisted. He said, nope, I ain't doing it. And guess what? By order and council, the British government imposed it on us. You catch what I'm saying? So when they make up their mind that this has to be done, whether you want to do it or not, they're going to do it. And what they would have done in terms of GST was a lot. The people of Anguilla should have put us off Anguilla and all if we had allowed the British government to impose that version of GST on the people of Anguilla. So even when it comes to that particular case, no, I stand by that decision.
Final question. Are politicians too disconnected from the struggles of the ordinary people?
I don't think that politicians are disconnected. You know, politicians are aware because politicians have the people knocking on their doors often, if you understand what I'm saying. So I don't think that they're disconnected. But I'll tell you this though. Everybody is at different levels in terms of their means. And for the most part, a lot of politicians may have more means than John Doe, right? So it doesn't mean that they're totally disconnected, because the poor and uneducated class in the United States of America voted overwhelmingly for a rich man who had no connections to the ordinary man on the street, right? No connections. So I can't say that Anguillan politicians are disconnected, because Anguilla is a very small community, very small community. And every politician in Anguilla, well, the older politicians, not the younger politicians, but the older politicians came up without any means, you know. We got electricity at my father's house when I was 13 years old. So I know why it was to live in darkness, right? And most people of my age know why it is to live in darkness and live with a kerosene lamp and something, then eventually a gas pump lamp, right? But the younger generation wouldn't have that experience, a different experience. Our generation, all of us who's on this panel today, went school without shoes. I guarantee you that. We went school without shoes. We didn't have uniforms when we went to school. Which one of you had uniforms when you went to school? Which one?
Not me.
Okay, all right. So when they tell people that, they don't relate, because they see the end result, they never see the journey. You know what I mean? So, I don't think that any of the politicians are disconnected, whether they're in government or opposition, from the plight of the people, because it comes to you. It comes to you. It don't turn off. You know what I mean? It isn't a situation where, you know, you're the states, you're a politician, you go and you mingle with people during election campaign, and then once you're elected, the only time the people see you is on television. In Anguilla, you're among the people, whether you try to duck them or not, right? So I know some people like to duck people, some politicians like to duck people. I remember Cora Judson Hodge in an interview saying that she looked forward to getting away from Anguilla, to traveling on a trip. I don't know who remember that, but I remember when she said that some time ago, right? I didn't look forward to leaving the island at all, because first of all, I have a fear of flying. So that's one. But the reality is that I don't think that it is disconnected, just because of the smallness of our society and community.
Is corruption direct or indirect a concern in governance?
Corruption is always a concern in governance, but I'll tell you something though. When I first became parliamentary secretary back in 2010, I bought a book about corruption, right? And corruption is so broad that it's so difficult to avoid the semblance of corruption. Let me give you an example. Parallel, for example, let's say he applied for a license for something, and the license is at the permanent secretary's desk. The permanent secretary signed off on a license already, but Harold didn't get nothing back from the permanent secretary. So Harold calls me, say, hey, I need to look into that license for me. And I go to the permanent secretary and say, hey, permanent secretary, Harold want to apply for this license and so forth. I need to see what you could do about it. That can be deemed as corruption. You understand what I'm saying? So based on the book that I read, so corruption is really, really broad, eh? Really, really broad. Now, the thing is that to call somebody corrupt and the person super defamation is a whole different ball game, because there's no such thing as called as freedom of speech. We see that even in the US. There's no such thing as freedom of speech, because remember that even the Trump administration said if you said anything negative about Charlie Kirk, or if you said anything negative about Netanyahu, or you said anything negative about Israel, they can revoke your business. They can do this. I mean, your visa. They can do a number of things to you. Cannot allow you in the country. A number of things they can sanction you. So there's no such thing as freedom of speech in this world today. Nowhere. In England, they arrested last year over 12,000 people for posts on social media. Meanwhile, in Russia, that it says is authoritarian, less than 600 people. So that tells you, you know. There's a lot.
Finally,
Oh my God.
as we leave now, let me ask you, in your view, do you see the country as progressing or regressing?
Well, right now it's regressing. I'm not saying that it can progress, because we have all of the institutions in place for it to be progressive. But right now it's regressing, in my opinion. It can turn around. You just need a government that listens. I think earlier Harold was speaking about a number of things that they can do and should do in order to move the country forward. You know, but again, you gotta listen. You can't be just giving you some soapbox, some appetizer to make you feel good. But I just had a meeting with Crow and she said this, she said that, and then when you leave, Crow say, well, he could go there with that. I ain't bothered with him and with that. You know what I mean? You got to be able to listen and really act.
That's a true saying, Mr. Hughes. Actions speak louder than words. I want to say a big thank you, Mr. Hughes, for giving up your time to be here on the program this evening. In your face, I found it very informative, as always, when we have a discussion with you. Very, very informative. Again, I want to say thank you, because this will not be your last visit to this program. You know, you'll be back again, because still got a lot of questions that I want to pose, because we keep hearing more questions than answers. You know, we seem to experiencing a drought when it comes to answers. So people are concerned, and if you say whether it's rhetoric or not, we put people first, but then you're not addressing certain pertinent issues. So how could you be putting people first? That's my concern all the time. You put people first. We put people first. No, if you're putting people first, there shouldn't be no speculation about the mansion in England, in the UK. People should already know about that. But anyhow,
if you put people first, you should be able to give the credits. You should be able to give the seniors their vouchers. There's so many things that you should be able to do if you have all of this revenue and you're thinking about people putting people first. But you can't put people first and in the same sentence say you're not giving them handouts, right?
All you're causing is grief instead of relief. With that said, I just want to say, guys, thank you all so much. It's been a privilege and a pleasure. Vanya, thanks for being there as always. Mr. Voice for the Voiceless, always, man, always. I always enjoy listening to you as you expound on the issues that are affecting us, because your ears are always to the ground, so you know exactly what goes on, and I always welcome that information from you. To Mr. Perrin Bradley, Deputy Governor, we want to say also thanking him for being here with us this evening on another edition, another presentation of what we call In Your Face. I am Melo Saludo First, the instigator or agitator, saying good evening, have a good weekend.
In your face. In your face. What may not like you? In your face, in your face, in your face, in your face. Turn up the sound, let the people unite. From the heart of PF, we speaking it clear. Real talk, real change in your face, we are. In your face, we say it bold, no delay. Truth and vibes every Saturday. Voices rise, let the whole world hear. We bring the fire in your face, right here. In your face, 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 in your face. We talking life, we talking change, we talk solutions. From the street to leaders, sparking revolution. No filter, no fear, just real conversation. Building up the more proof, uplift the nation. Ideas flow like the ocean tide.